Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a brand new episode of Roundabout Sports presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. I'm the maestro Jeremy Carp alongside everybody's favorite umpire and yet severely underpaid for being one, Hollywood James Knox, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, Jeremy.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good. This has been a very long, just a long week. It's kind of drug on, so otherwise good. Ready for Friday.
I don't blame you there. I will say I'm excited, folks, because tonight it is a Blaze of Glory 2.0 because we got the one and only Sadie Blaze back with us after a amazing part one a few weeks ago. We knew it was just too big of an appearance for just one episode, so we had to have him back on. And I am so looking forward to it. And I know, James, you are as well. We were actually just sharing stories with each other, the three of us, before we went on the air. And he had a pretty interesting one. So if that's what's to like a preview of what's to come, I already know tonight's just going to be fantastic.
Should be pretty good. Yeah.
So, folks, also be sure to find us. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, for Roundabout Sports, for Interstate 70 Sports Media. You can find James and I on there. And I will say this, folks, we're in October. It is October baseball time. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're in the heat of, starting a football season, but I can't believe it's playoffs, baby. I love it. It's great.
Fall's my favorite time of year. One of my birthday sets in this month, but yeah, it's you can. I think I mentioned it last week when I kind of went off on my cold weather or cool weather. It just feels right kind of tangent. Yeah, we're there. Regular season's over. Finally got you can kind of take the teams that failed to meet the standards and sweep them under the rug, and of course they'll fly off to their exotic homes. And we'll weed out the bad teams, and now we've got playoff baseball starting on Fridays. So
absolutely, and when we have Sadie on in just a little bit, we're going to definitely talk not only about what's to come in baseball, but a lot of the accomplishments that have already happened. Because believe it or not, a few interesting things have happened this season that are worth talking about. Just a few. I mean, between Miguel Cabrera, Aaron Judge. Albert Pujols, I mean, bunch of no-hitters, Justin Verlander, Zach Greinke. There's just a few things that have happened this season.
I saw the list, and I think because it happened in the middle of the summer and so much has happened since then, I almost forgot about Miggy getting to 3,000 hits. I mean, so much has happened since then.
That's just because he's with Detroit.
Well, I think part of that's too because they're not nationally covered. I mean, why would you cover a team like that?
I was about to say, why cover the Detroit Tigers? I'm telling you, the Detroit Lions, that's one thing because they're actually fun to watch. Detroit Tigers, not at all. So yeah, there's plenty to talk about. But first, we're gonna go into our lovely NFL Week 4 recap. And James is not looking forward to it. And I'll be honest, folks, neither am I, because this was one of the most depressing weeks in football for both of us, because not only did one of my fantasy football teams lose.
I lost too.
Yeah, his lost too, but his favorite football team and my favorite football team lost. So, and the reasons behind it are recurring themes with our teams that we cheer on. And I'll go first on this because I just need to get it out of my system.
Hang on. Before you get started, if you go back and listen to the Strike Zone on Friday, I told everybody that the Cleveland-Atlanta game was going to be sneaky good. And it was. I didn't expect him to beat Cleveland, but proceed.
Yeah, I didn't expect them to beat Cleveland, but this was actually one of the least hurtful games. Like I said, because I was at the season finale or the home finale at Busch Stadium. So right. I was like, okay, Cleveland wins. Awesome. If they lose, you know what? Screw it. Don't get your hopes up too much. It wasn't as bad. Then I heard the reasons why they lost, and I realized everyone's favorite defensive coordinator, Joe Woods, was at fault, basically, for running up poor schemes, leaving guys wide open in the middle of the field. This easily The Atlanta could not stop the two-headed monster of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. There was no stopping them. There never is. So that obviously, aside from some questionable callings on the offensive side, Kevin Stefanski is usually a very solid head coach,
Right.
and I'm glad that he's sticking around. He's got that. You have that consistent structure within your franchise, but then you get to the defense, and there is too much talent. I will say they missed a lot of key pieces this week. Their entire defensive line was out. Garrett was out because of the car crash. Jadeveon Clowney was still out. And Taven Bryan was out. I mean, it was just an entirely new front of defensive linemen.
Right.
And so that obviously affected a lot of things. But Anthony Walker's out for the season. So on top of all that, but you got the top paid corner in football, Denzel Ward, who, yes, makes a nice interception in the game, but he has got to be better back in coverage, manning up against these guys. I think I've learned, if anything, that they struggle more against the zone than they do in man coverage. Man coverage, they're pretty solid, but when it comes to zone coverage, this team is just absolute crap.
Apparently, he's read the Jalen Ramsey's handbook to learning how to tackle and cover. So I'm sorry. I understand your point.
Yeah, exactly. And thankfully, though, it's not as much the Thankfully, he didn't read the Jalen Ramsey attitude handbook, because then I'd be even more upset.
Right.
And of course, meanwhile, we got, hey, look at that. Our good old friend Christopher Miles, one of the top referees around out here, who's been running the gauntlet of wrestling events lately. I tell you, I recently had the pleasure of seeing him at Dynamo Pro Wrestling's Riot on the River out in Grafton, Illinois, which is always one of my favorite shows. And this year's show definitely did not disappoint. I will say it was a very cool night indeed. Obviously the wrestling quality was phenomenal, but I'm telling you, James, it got down to the low 50s. And I'm like, yep, we're in fall. It's definitely fall season. I'm like, holy shit, I'm having the heat on as I'm going home.
Yeah, I know it's supposed to get into the low 30s this weekend. So,
in Jags history, as always, tuning in every week, and we so greatly appreciate it.
Good question for you.
Yes and no. I think Tatum Biden's been very consistent. He's really been good up front, and I think considering you have to fill in the spots that Malik McDowell and Malik Jackson had in the past, it's not the easy, and Sheldon Richardson, it's not easy to fill those spots on a year's notice, but it was huge getting back Jadeveon Clowney. Even though he signs 1-year deals, it was huge getting him back, and Garrett's back practicing. So I think overall they should be set, but the problem is now they're going to start facing the tougher competition. I mean, that's where this whole issue comes in, because guess what? Next week they got the Chargers. And that is not a team that you want to slack off against.
Nope.
When it comes to defensive play. With Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler, Mike Williams. And then after that, they got the Patriots, the Ravens, the Bengals. I mean, now you start getting some tough matchups. So, and it's interesting because, shoot, the Browns are still in first place, so I'll take it. I'll take a first place into week 5. It's not about how you get there; it's about if you get there, and they've gotten there. And I'll say this because then I know, James, I definitely got to get it to you on what's been going on in Rams country.
Yeah,
but I don't know what's weirder, to think that the Browns are in first or the Steelers are dead last at 1-3 with Kenny Pickett starting at quarterback.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you want to talk about a schedule gauntlet? Yeah, Pittsburgh's is not looking good. Let me put it to you perspective. So they're 1-3 right now. This upcoming Sunday, they got the Bills. Next week, the Buccaneers. Then the Dolphins. Then the Eagles. Then the Saints. Then the Bengals.
Good Lord.
So, with no true consistency on that team besides Najee Harris, there's a chance that the Steelers might start off 2-6, 1-7. At best, you hope as a Steeler fan 3-5.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm going to say it right now. Flashback to 2004 when Big Ben was third on the depth chart behind Tommy Maddox and Charlie Batch. And he shot up there, and we all know what happened. The rest is history. So I feel like if any franchise could find a way to overcome this type of situation, it would be the Steelers. But they are definitely... I don't think they handled the transition well from Trubisky to Pickett. And this has come from a guy that's seen a lot of bad quarterback transitions.
Right.
So
Yeah.
in that regard, I know what I'm talking about.
Right. Whether you're a Browns or a Rams fan, as many times as we've watched it. So, I want, God, I don't even know if I should complain about our defensive coordinator, considering we just came off a Super Bowl championship. Okay, I mean, as a sports fan, I'm spoiled. I'm a Cardinals fan. I'm a Rams fan. I'm an Alabama fan. I'm a Blues fan. And all of them have won championships, with the exception of the Cardinals, who last won in 2011, but were in the National League Championship Series in 2019. So I'm spoiled. But it's – I can't even get it out without laughing. It's 3rd and 11. You've got the Niners backed up. You have a chance to get off the field. It's a wide receiver screen that goes 54 yards to the house. And, so that's where the Jalen Ramsey book of covering and tackling comes in, because he did a terrible job on Deebo Samuel Monday night. Raheem Morris has to know that's coming. But kind of similar to you and your Browns, Jeremy, it wasn't our defensive line this week that was just battered with injuries. Our offensive line everybody was out.
Yeah, it's getting worse.
And then we lose Coleman Shelton, who had been bumped over to center. We lose him in the first quarter of the game. Allen Robinson, this isn't – and I'm answering Jags History's question here. This isn't a Sean McVay scheme issue. This is an Allen Robinson has to learn how to win one-on-one. And he never had to worry about that in Chicago because, everybody – all these teams that played Chicago, they stacked the box because it was either going to be Montgomery or it was going to be I don't know why I can't think of their other running back they had.
For the Rams?
For Tariq Cohen.
In Chicago. Oh, for Chicago. Yeah, Tariq the Freak. You got to love Tariq Cohen.
Right. So the teams would stack the box with 8 or 9 guys, and they would stop the run. And if you were going to throw the ball, Allen Robinson didn't have to worry about trying to figure out a zone because it was a lot of one-on-one man. Look, when you play the Rams now because of Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee, and when he gets back Van Jefferson, you have to play zone and cut the field into seconds or thirds, and Allen Robinson just hasn't found his groove. OBJ, yes, he just had a visit with the Giants. OBJ is meeting with everybody. I mean, he's met with the Bills, he's met with the Giants. He was obviously there opening night when the Rams got their rings. He's met with the Rams, he's met with the Dolphins. I mean, this man has met with everybody. This man he's like the Dennis Rodman of the NFL. He's met with everybody. So, but back to it. Yeah, I saw this too. Let's talk about this real quick.
We'll talk about this one. Yeah. So basically what happened, this is too funny. So basically 49ers fan ran onto the field on Monday Night Football, and because nobody on the network televisions has a sense of humor, they don't show it. But anyway,
did you see the video of it after the fact?
Yes, there is plenty of video out there of Bobby Wagner, the star middle linebacker of the Los Angeles Rams, straight up spearheading this guy down. I mean, you think it'd be something right out of WCW. I mean, this was a spear.
Yeah, he decleated him.
Yeah. And so now this person has filed a police report against the Manning cast did show it. So, and because the Manning cast is fun.
Peyton loved it too.
Oh, I'm sure he did. He's probably saying to himself, thank God for once it wasn't me.
Yeah.
But yes, so now he's filing a police report, and Greg Gaines tweeted out that I was scared for my life. The guy could have had a bomb on him. So, and everything. And it's like, okay, we do get that type of fear because you are endangering a lot of aspects of the players by running on the field like that.
And he did it like the smoke.
Yeah, he had the pink smoke,
Yeah.
which, I don't see the point of that.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it should be interesting to see how this unfolds considering everything because even though he's trespassing, at the same time, technically, wouldn't it be considered assault?
Well,
Because
here's the thing, though. I mean, if you read the back of a lot of these tickets, and they, they warn you about stuff coming into the stands, and that if you step onto the field, you will be prosecuted. Well, I mean, I guess Wagner decided to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner. But I mean, if you step on the field like that, I feel that all of your personal protections are taken away.
I mean that's fair enough.
If you run onto the field at Busch Stadium, or remember the guy, wasn't there there was a prop bet at the Super Bowl if there was somebody who ran on the field and a guy like bet his friend $1,000 that he wouldn't do it.
I remember that.
So, but I mean, we're talking about it in a different day and age too. I mean, remember to really tie this in with baseball, and I think we mentioned this in the first interview with Sadie, was the fact that remember when Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's home run record, and the two jumped on, ran around the bases with him, and they had snipers at the top of Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. So, I mean, if you're going, I mean, God, I hate to use this term, but we're all adults here. Maybe the guy that jumped on the field, he just, he felt that, he needed to quote unquote fuck around and find out. Well, he found out. Now, in that logic, I feel like your protections are taken away from you.
Yeah, and what's interesting though, it used to always say on the back of tickets, but guess what? In 2022, we don't have
everything's digital.
Everything's digital. You know what the back of my Cardinals ticket is? The case on my phone.
Yeah,
that's the back of the ticket these days. Your ticket's
a QR code. That's it.
Yeah, but the QR code.
You understand my point?
No, I totally understand the point, and and to kind of bring it into the perspective of a sporting event, because they say this at Busch Stadium too. About what can lead to you getting ejected, arrested, things like that. They had the message on the video board. So it's not like they never warn you. I think here's one more example I'll put. The 82 World Series. First off, one of the greatest moments. I enjoy watching that time and time again. It'll never get old. And I do think it's great seeing like the fans all rushing the field, the stadium with the fireworks. It's such a beautiful sight. But I understand why you can't do that today.
Right.
It's cool. It's great to see back then. And it's grateful because nothing bad happened, that night. But yeah, I totally get why,
I mean, let's go back in the last year in WWE when Seth Rollins was attacked.
Yeah.
I mean, look.
Attacking a wrestler is probably the stupidest thing you could do, but
that or a middle linebacker, one of the two. I mean, it'd be
like
trying to hog tie Umaga, but I mean, I feel in somebody, I can't remember who it was that tweeted it out. It may have been another Rams player. It's like, look, if that's the case, then the NFL should sue the guy who's suing Bobby Wagner and give him the money back. I was like, well, or you could pump it into our offensive line, one of the two.
Right. Well, I'll tell you this much. Definitely was a rough week for both our teams, for our mental stability. Although, yeah, as football fans,
we have the Cowboys this week, so I'm hoping we can get right. But I don't know how.
I mean,
I don't know how you're going to block Micah Parsons.
I only got Justin Herbert, and
it doesn't get any easier.
I will say this though, at least this time, I don't have to worry about if it. Worst case scenario, I don't have to worry about a Baker Mayfield generated drive to try to win the game. Because guess what? Panthers once again lost.
Yeah.
So it's not getting any better for him down there. So
we play them in 2 weeks. We play them in 2 weeks. So if we can't get right against the Cowboys, we'll at least be 3-3 after the Panthers game.
Right.
But with you to tie it all up, like our division, everybody in the division's 2-2. What have we really lost?
Yeah, and then the Jags have the Texans this week, and I'll say this one last thing on our lovely football conversation. Jaguars have surprised me this year. They've finally gotten some good pieces. They've most importantly got Urban Meyer as far away from the organization as possible. Yeah. Trevor Lawrence has been a lot more patient throwing the football.
Just to hang on.
Excuse me. And on top of that, they just have better guys to be throwing to. I love the rushing combination of Travis Etienne and James Robinson. Overall, Jacksonville is a fun team to watch, and in that crappy division, that's saying something.
They should be 4-0 or at least 3-1, but Trevor had a case of the dropsies last week. You couldn't hang on to the ball against Philadelphia. Now I know it was raining, but I can argue, hey, guess what? The Eagles had to play in the same conditions.
Yeah, but at the same time in Philly, I mean, that's called Sunday. I mean,
True.
in Jacksonville, it's like, what is this?
Well, but wait a minute. It still rains in northern Florida. He played his football at Clemson, which is in South Carolina.
Here's a wonderful moment,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, here's a moment for you in
This is a good one.
baseball history, and I know we're about to have Sadie on, and I know he remembers this when two guys ran onto the field, tried to burn the American flag at Dodger Stadium. And Rick Monday, still currently broadcasting Dodgers games.
Yep.
Snatched it away, and when he went up to bat, everybody's giving him a standing ovation and everything. So
here's the moral of the story: don't run onto the field. Period. Sit there and enjoy the game. Don't be stupid.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're at like a Diamondbacks game, then they need
Play
some entertainment.
stupid games, win stupid prizes.
You know what? I will say this. At least fans are smart not to really go on hockey rinks as much because A, they don't have the skates, and B, they will get absolutely crushed.
At Blues games, if they tried it, Berube and Ott would cut them off before they even got over the glass.
You know what, though?
Quoted by Chief.
Imagine getting it by Tony Twist back in the day.
Oh, my God. Him, Kelly Chase, Bob Basson, those guys.
Chris Pronger. I mean,
oh my goodness.
Holy, yeah, I was going to say, like, there's the Bad Street Boys for you.
Yeah.
For the 90s.
No doubt.
So with that, folks, we have so much baseball to talk about, and keep on submitting your questions. We will get them as many. I know Jared had sent one in. I told him we will be saving that one for when Sadie's on. So with that, folks, he is a softball Hall of Famer. He is heavily involved in the wrestling industry, especially with Dynamo Pro Wrestling, which you can find out in beautiful St. Louis, of course, and all along the Midwest. I mean, they've been out in Columbia, they've been in Illinois. I mean, it doesn't even – it runs the gamut for them. But he's been a part of so many other promotions. And on top of everything, let me tell you, when it comes to, like, sports collections, this guy has his stuff. And when it comes to sports knowledge, he knows this stuff. And it's my honor to have him as a friend, and it's my honor to have him on as a guest tonight, once again, for Roundabout Sports. Welcome aboard, Sadie Blaze.
Hey, kids. How are you?
I'm good, Sadie. How are you?
I'm good. If I'm a little distracted for the first few minutes, I'm watching the last bit of my fantasy baseball season wind down, and I'm about to win. So
there you go. Go out in style. Can't say the same for our football teams.
I'm glad somebody had a good fantasy baseball season. My team was terrible. I couldn't stay healthy.
My team was terrible from the beginning, and I just diligently kept replacing with the hot player. Whoever's hot, I pick him up. I picked up Alex Verdugo about 3 times this year. He'd be real good for 2 or 3 weeks, and then he'd be terrible, and I just get rid of him. But I mean, I've got no top line superstars on my team, and I ended up winning the league. So.
Well, the funny thing is, and Sadie and I are part of the same fantasy hockey league, and we had our draft a few days ago, and I told the guys, I said, look, I have an all-star team. Granted, that all-star team's from 2015, but it's an all-star team because I got Sidney Crosby, Patrick Kane, Joe Pavelski, Brent Burns, Shattenkirk, Malkin. I mean, I'm telling you, if this was a few years ago, undefeated season right here.
Well, yeah, but I mean, look at it though. I mean, Sid the Kid and Malkin in Pittsburgh are still producing. And
I was one pick away from getting Ovechkin too, and the guy before me got it, and I got pissed.
And Burns is in Carolina now, so I'm sure he'll be rejuvenated there, getting out of San Jose. I mean, you may have done well for yourself.
Well, this is what's funny about that. So the last time I did a fantasy hockey team, I was back in high school, and my friend who is Canadian, he was a big Maple Leafs fan, still is. He told me to pick up James Reimer, who was their starting goalie at the time. By random chance, because I've been focusing so much on, the main lineup, I had already gotten Thatcher Demko from Vancouver as my goalie,
Mhm.
but the other goalie I ended up getting was James Reimer, and I'm like, wait a minute, holy shit, this is full circle here.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like I cannot escape Reimer fever.
I won my hockey league last year. I don't know if I'm going to play this year. Fantasy baseball, I'll tell you, it's similar to hockey because you have the week long, matchups against, head to head. That takes a lot out of you, man, to try to keep up with that. I'm like, do I just want to enjoy hockey season or do I want to jump back in again?
Well, this is mostly Dynamo Pro associated people, so it's more
Gotcha.
than just who wins the games. It's there's a lot of locker room talk and
So you get a lot of bragging rights there.
yeah, and
Exactly. When you get to the show, you're going to hear some of them talking their shit if you don't win.
Well, the guy that won last year, he might have problems getting booked in the future.
Yep.
Because he beat Jim in the finals. Jim's a promoter, and we are like,
Oh no!
might not wanna do that.
Shoot! Yeah, I was
Is that
going to
where-
say.
Is that where they talk about when they played the hockey game in Russia against Putin that they all let him score and let him score
right.
8 or 9 goals just so
That's right.
you're in good favor still? Is that how that works?
Yes.
Exactly how it works.
It's like no matter what, do not beat the boss. There you go. That's how you do it.
Man.
I got Austin Matthews as my first pick, and I was like, great. And then it was garbage after that. I'm like, I quit.
I love some of the names that we have. And I'm only gonna say I'm gonna say mine and then one other. But first off, I wish I had thought of moves like Yager. That one,
Oh, I like that one.
I like that one because Yager's my favorite. I love.
It's his favorite too.
Yeah, and then then we got Bacchus that ass up.
That's a good one too.
Yeah.
And then mine is Tumo R2D2.
I like that one too.
So
I love the creativity. Those are the best
absolutely.
ones.
Yeah, the ones that like go out there and like really work for it, it's fun to see. And so I was like debating it at first, and then I'm realizing, you know what, I'm kind of getting my ass kicked in fantasy football. Let's give fantasy hockey a try, see if I can get some. And hopefully during the next Illinois show we do, if I beat one of the guys in the game, I won't get power bombed or something. So
Right.
I would say I won my hockey league last year. I was kind of simple. I kind of played off being a Blues fan. The name of my team was Blues Clues. And I mean, like I stomped everybody and I'm like, I can't do that again. I'm going to sit back and enjoy it. Because I think I released Bennington and waived him like 3 or 4 times last year before I actually picked him up for good.
Well,
we've been doing this league for a long time, like 8 to 10 years at least. And it used to be when there was like 8 teams or 10 teams, it was pretty easy to find somebody to fill it. If you need an extra goalie, you pick up a guy every week and you just drop in and out, in and out, in and out. But now there's 12 plus teams. Last year was our first year with 12 teams, and it got tough. There was no goalies left.
Right.
Well, that's a problem in fantasy football, like in my league, where we have we got 12 teams. The one where I'm within my close friends, we got 12 teams. So trying to find like running backs and receivers on waivers is just absolute hell. You can't find anybody. Like literally the 2 of the top guys I've gotten off waivers is probably like Chase Claypool or Mark Ingram or something, because there's just nobody available.
Right.
So with all that, I'll tell you, as much as we talk fantasy, one thing that you would think is a fantasy, but is a reality, is the fact that the St. Louis Cardinals are NL Central Division champs. They got home field advantage throughout the wild card series. And we flash back just a few months, and these guys couldn't even score a run over the course of 3 games. Sadie, what's changed?
You mean a few weeks ago?
That too. I think there's been 3 of those throughout the course of the season, 3 of those droughts, and fans are on the verge of jumping off their rooftops when that happens.
Well, the kids cooled off. The pitching adjusted to them, which is what happens, and they need to make their own adjustments so they can continue to be good. I don't think much of the team going in the playoffs, honestly. I would not be surprised if they went 2-0 against Philadelphia.
Yeah, which brings up the question that was asked at the beginning before we brought you on is how far do you think the Cardinals will make it into the series? And you think the Phillies, who are kind of riding hot right now, the first playoff appearance since 2011, I mean, obviously they have a lot to prove, and they want to prove a lot.
Harper's got a lot to prove, first of all, and that guy runs the team. They're going to throw Wheeler and Nola the first 2 games.
Yep.
That's not what I want to do. I would not want to go up against those 2 guys with 1 game to win.
That's definitely true. James, what are you thinking?
Look, the Cardinals are one of those teams that it wouldn't surprise me if they lost 2 in a row to Philly and they were done. It wouldn't also surprise me if they ended up in the World Series. They're just one of those teams. Now, we can get into the details of it later about how far we think we'll go, into the playoffs, because ultimately if you get by Philadelphia, your prize is playing the Atlanta Braves, which they are, I mean, they're on fire. But you're right. You've got Wheeler in game 1, you've got Nola in game 2, and you're probably going to see Noah Syndergaard in game 3 if there is a game 3. So look, better strap it up, because it's not going to be easy to get to win this series at all. It's going to be even tougher to score runs than it was, 3 weeks ago when you were going through your little streak.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And the big thing with the Cardinals right now, the reason for a lot of the talk of the Cardinals and a lot of the hot momentum they've had over the past couple weeks is purely almost based on just the momentum, knowing that this is it for Albert and Yachty, and the adrenaline that kicks in these players that are like, look, we need to win this for them. We need to win this for the city, for all of us. But Albert came back. Yachty's sticking it out for this last one. We don't know what's happening with Wainwright, so we need to win this. The problem is that type of momentum can only get you so far. Because guess what? Let's flash back to when we faced the Braves last and how literally we couldn't score a damn run. Like, we couldn't catch a cold if it was literally handed to us. So
actually, wait a minute now, because if you go back to the last time we played the Braves, remember we swept them that week, that weekend series, because you beat them on, it was Tyler.
Well, then
O'Neill
the one before it, then
yeah,
okay.
when we were
original
in
one, the one in Atlanta.
Yeah, because that was where Tyler O'Neill had his magical Sunday night, but there's a difference. Tyler O'Neill's not going to be around in the wild card round either.
No, and the problem also still remains: who is your rotation? We've talked about this, James, for weeks, and it can't be wait. And that's the thing. I brought it up 2 weeks ago. I said, at some point you have to have Wainwright out there. But the thing of it is, and Sadie, I definitely want to know what you think. But I think, and I really hate saying this, I don't think you can put Adam Wainwright out there in the wild card series, especially against Wheeler and Nola.
He doesn't need to be on the wild card roster.
Nope.
You're going to put him on the roster. You have to have him. No. You have to have him on the roster.
Because you're not going to throw him. You can reset your roster going into the divisional round if you win the wild card. You could have him start game 1 in a longer series. There's absolutely no way he can be on this roster.
I feel like the Cardinals are not going to have Wainwright off any roster with the mindset that he could also be done.
This isn't about nostalgia. This is about winning a championship.
It's not about it, but the thing of it is, it's also mixed in. Nostalgia is partly what's gotten them to this point, because they've been riding on the adrenaline momentum of a lot of things regarding nostalgia.
If you got to have him on the roster, then he's in the bullpen.
Then that's fine. I mean, hell, it's not like
I don't like him out of the bullpen either. So
do you trust him in a big spot? Because I don't.
And we're fortunate, at least in the Cardinals especially, that Ryan Helsley did not get hurt as bad as it originally seemed last night. Every Cardinal fan in existence held their breath, because the last thing you need is one of the top relievers in all of baseball getting hurt days before you have to face one of the hottest teams in a 3-game best-of-3 wild card series.
Well, you got Gallegos. That's a joke.
Tongue in cheek. Hey, you did activate Jordan Hicks today.
You did, Jack? Okay. Well, good. Then we met the quota on guys that can throw 100 miles an hour.
Right.
But can't control it?
Yeah, but can't control it. And that's the thing. But that's the thing. Helsley can control it, and that's
Right.
why he is so imperative to this team. And looking at Dakota Hudson got sent down to Memphis.
Thank God.
So yeah, I was gonna say. Now there was somebody I knew wasn't going to be a part of this roster. There was no way. I mean, he had a couple good bullpen outings since coming back from Memphis, but there was just no. With Flaherty coming back, there was no way he was going to be a part of this this playoff run that the Cardinals are hoping to have.
Here's the problem with the Cardinals rotation. The Philadelphia Phillies mash left-handed pitching. Two of the guys that you would put in that rotation that have thrown well for you in Quintana and Montgomery are left-handed. Michaelis has to go game 1.
Yes.
And then I'm probably going to throw Quintana game 2. And if there's a game 3, it's going to be probably Montgomery and Flaherty.
Yeah.
Sadie, what do you think about what rotation do you think you'd have going for you for the wild card?
I mean, I agree with James. It's almost a no-brainer. It's got to be Michaelis in 1, and Quintana's the better one of the two. And you go game 3 and you hope one of them catches lightning in a bottle and get you through it.
Well, it's interesting because Montgomery had the better start. Quintana's had the better finish. Both of them are still really good, but you definitely want to have say the Cardinals win game 1. Obviously, you want the more surefire, trusted lefty on the mound, which, based off just the last few weeks, would be Jose Quintana. And which, a few months ago, nobody ever thought you'd be saying that in this point.
Well, the funny thing is you go back to 2011 when you faced the Philadelphia Phillies in the first round, and of course we were outmatched, and their pitching was better with Halladay and Cliff Lee and this part. And we saw what happened. Obviously, different time, different series, all that other stuff. But there's one thing that is similar. If you watch Quintana pitch, boy, if he doesn't get a call, he kind of gets the red ass like Chris Carpenter did, and I like that competitive nature because he's going to be the kind of guy you need on the mound that if things start to swing the other way, that he can bear down and shove it. And that's what you need in the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much. So folks, yeah, let us know. Do you think we should have Adam Wainwright on the roster in any way, shape, or form? Now, I believe it's for 18 days that Dakota Hudson couldn't even be placed on anything now that he's been optioned down.
It changes once you get to the playoffs. When you set your rosters, everything changes. Everything resets.
Okay, well,
I hope he's not on the damn team next year, let alone any roster.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm just saying.
Gotta go.
This is the interesting thing. So Hudson and Flaherty are those two pitchers that when they first started, everybody was like excited about to see what they could do. Flaherty was really good, but then injuries took their toll. Hudson as well got hurt, but the problem is he started to be almost Rick Ankiel-like and just had no control. He would throw 40 pitches an inning, and he'd pitch 3 innings. And if a quality start for a pitcher is more than 5 innings. Well, a quality start for Dakota Hudson is past the 3rd inning. And that's not something you can have on a major league rotation. You cannot. Dakota Hudson, as of this moment and as of recently, is not a reliable starter to have. He is a good short-term arm you could get out of the bullpen, but the Cardinals have so many other better arms in the bullpen that, yeah, it's not really a loss if Hudson's not there. And that's the big takeaway from all of it. I'm glad Flaherty's going to be a big part of it, and I'm glad they haven't given up on Jack Flaherty because he's still a big part of their future plans. And it's not like the guy is 28 years old. I mean, Flaherty is only 26. So,
I think he's part of their plans for the next 2 years until he bolts for the West Coast, because I think that's where he's going to head, is back home to Los Angeles.
Well, here we go. Jared has his opinion on the matter. Thank you so much. And he says he doesn't work well under pressure, so no. But thinking in management, I'd say 45% chance he'll be in the series. So, and that's in regards to Adam Wainwright. Yeah. And that's in regards to Wainwright. And like I said, he's not starting. There's no way he's going to start, and I'm totally understanding of that, especially when I do think the issue does arise, though, that two of your best starting pitchers are what the Phillies are best against. That's where that's the interesting matchup in the series a lot of people need to pay attention to.
Well, the key is what has to happen is Michaelis has to win you game one. He has to shove, and you have to win that game by hook or by crook. And then after that, you can figure, games 2 and 3 out because it gives you a little bit of leeway. The other problem outside of the rotation is getting any kind of production from the outfield. I mean, other than Lars Nootbaar, Dylan Carlson is really cooled off. I mean, you're going to put Juan Yepes out in left field because he's the better offensive. God. I mean, because you're not going to have Tyler O'Neill. I mean, there are so many holes in this lineup. And, unfortunately, Paul DeJong is going to be on this roster because you need him to be.
I was going to say, that's the one thing I dread about this is the fact DeJong's going to be on the roster because that was the only reason he was playing in the last home series. DeJong is – this is the thing. And it's like we're not trying – it's and for the record, it's not a personal attack. But,
yes, it is.
Well, okay, maybe – okay, for James, it's a personal attack. For me, it's not.
I think I like him.
Yeah. No, Paul DeJong – yeah, I was going to say, this is a guy that is just praying that when he becomes a major league umpire, he doesn't have to be there with Paul DeJong. Although it would be a simple job, all you'd have to say is strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, and you're out.
You have to really lift your hand. He swings and misses at everything, okay?
He either swings and misses at everything, or he doesn't even swing at anything, and they're all strikes.
True.
But you got it because of that lack of depth at the infield. You're going to have Paul DeJong on that roster, and you're going to pray to the good Lord above that it doesn't have to come down to him in any situation. You're going to have Kisner on the roster, obviously, because, Molina's 40-year-old knees aren't going to be able to do everything. The thing of it is, I do agree with the outfield issue because, the only guy that's really been producing has been Lars Nootbaar. And I feel like he's also the only one that consistently plays.
Yeah.
You see such a rotation of guys like Yepes out there, Carlson, Dickerson, all these guys are just swapping in and out. Nootbaar is the only one that is constantly there.
Well, and facing two right-handed pitchers in games 1 and 2, you're probably going to see Corey Dickerson in left field too. As much as I hate to admit that, he's going to be out there because he's a left-handed bat. Now, defensively, it doesn't matter whether he's out there or Yepes is out there because they're both subpar defensively. That's another reason you have to have DeJong on the roster because if you need to move Brendan Donovan to the outfield, at least we've seen him play right field effectively.
Donovan's good in the outfield.
You can put Lars in left field and then, you build things defensively. That's the other reason why I think DeLuzio makes this roster is because you need outfield
on the
defense.
roster.
Yep.
He's on the roster.
Yeah, he's going to be on it.
And he's quick as hell.
Honestly, with the state of some of the outfield problems, I might just throw Pujols out there and go, I don't know, see what happens.
They had no problem putting him out there on the mound. Let's put him anywhere else.
There you go.
Guys, I don't know that he's going to be worse.
It's the funny thing. I mean, shoot, put him in left field. That's where he started at.
Right.
If the fans want more of a nostalgia tour, I was going to say, that's the funny thing. Like, James, you and I last week talked about a bunch of old baseball games and everything, and one of them was MVP Baseball 4. Well, what's funny is in that game, Pujols is a left fielder because that's where he originally was. And I'm thinking, and you fast forward all these years, and it's like, why do they have him here? And it's like, oh, well, shit.
Well, I mean, hell, he played left field. He played third base. He was a first baseman. I mean, here's the other thing. And they brought this up on the broadcast the other day. And when you mentioned that, talking about old baseball games, is it hard to believe as we kind of wrap up, Pujols and Yadier Molina's final season, that some of the players Pujols played with, remember when he played left field, he was on the same field as Mark McGwire. McGwire faced guys when he come up that are now 60, 70 years old. And as Pujols rides off into the sunset after having another memorable weekend in the homestand over the weekend against the Pirates, before they went to Pittsburgh, it's just crazy to think some of the players, I was watching the game this afternoon. I caught the tail end of it, and they showed a clip of Yadier Molina throwing out a runner. Well, you know who the shortstop was that covered the bag? Edgar Renteria.
Yep.
I mean, it's crazy to think just how everything ties in, but boy, I'd love to have
They're also these two, Molina and Albert, are also basically the last two links to the old Busch Stadium. Yeah. That's the big thing too when it comes to baseball, because both these guys obviously got their start at the Busch Memorial Stadium. Wainwright did as well, but he cut it so close because it was in September of 2005. So he really was right there. But Molina and Albert, especially Albert, obviously made a lot of noise at Busch Memorial Stadium. And so, you hear this talk all the time of passing of generations and how much these guys have meant to so many. Because, I mean, think of all the people that have grown up watching Yadier Molina and Albert Pujols and Adam Wainwright play.
You want a cool statistic?
All right, go for it.
Of the 402 players drafted ahead of Albert Pujols, 290 of them never played a major league ball game.
Oh gosh. That's like that. I think is worse than the whole Tom Brady drafted in the 6th round thing.
Well, I mean, Pujols was drafted in the 13th round, a round that does not even exist in the
exactly. That's why it has to be worse.
I don't know. I do hope that, man. I hope they get through at least the first round of the playoffs. You don't want to be one and done, especially with it being Yadi and Albert's last season. But there are a lot of uncertainties that have to fall. Everything has to fall perfectly into place.
It does.
Yes, they won the division. Yes, they won 93 games, but winning that division is not too hard.
No,
it's not a very good division. It's sort of like Cleveland winning their division.
Yeah,
who they beat nobody.
It still is nuts to me to think that the Cardinals, right at the trade deadline, were 4.5 games behind the Brewers to finish 7 games up on them.
Yeah,
I mean, Milwaukee, after that trade of Josh Hader to San Diego, boy, did
that killed them. Losing Hader killed them, and they are so stubborn to admit it. But it really came back to bite them in the ass.
Like, go get it, boys! We just destroyed your bullpen.
Yeah. Sorry, can't hear you from 3 games back. That is my favorite. That might be my favorite meme because you can poke so much fun at it now.
Yeah, the Brewers' social media killed it, didn't they?
Yeah, now they're literally killed.
Yep.
So here's an interesting tidbit question for you guys before we go on to talking about some of the interesting things from this season. So when Pujols and Molina both retire, and for the sake of this discussion point, let's just say Adam Wainwright retires after the season as well. Guess who the longest tenured Cardinal will be?
Ooh, let me think. Well, this is a tough one.
Not the young, is it?
No.
Is it Tyler O'Neill?
Nope. The answer, Alex Reyes.
Oh
my.
Yeah.
Because he was originally with the Cardinals in 2016.
Yeah.
And so think about that. So you take a long time thinking about that because it's like, holy shit, he's still with the organization. So
who knew?
Yeah, who knew? I mean, the only way we knew him is if we watched a wild card game from last year. Find out.
Oh, too soon. Still too soon. That hurt.
R.I.P. Okay, so from some bad news for Cardinals fans to some good news for fans of baseball. This has probably been, and we're not even officially starting the playoffs yet. It's still a couple days away, but this is probably going to go down as one of the most iconic and historic seasons in the history.
Before we get into this, I have a bone to pick with MLB. Something I forgot.
Just one?
What the hell is going on with Michael Kay and Alex Rodriguez calling the Cardinal game?
Yeah, okay, I agree with that. Once I saw A-Rod, Michael Kay is one thing, but when you have A-Rod,
obnoxious as hell.
Yeah, but A-Rod. It's we're gonna hear A-Rod probably all game bitch about how Pujols passed him up on the list
and why people hate him.
And he's like, well, Yeah, that's a bad choice.
I completely forgot about that. I just had to get that.
I was trying to forget it, but thank you for reminding me.
Well, you're gonna get to hear that annoying New York accent all weekend long.
No, I'm not, because I'm gonna be smart. I'm gonna listen to KMOX.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss games 2 and 3 unless I get home from the ballpark early enough. But
we'll blast Alex Rodriguez's voice from into the speakers at the stadium for you,
so
James.
help me God.
You're going to be behind the plate, strike one, and then all of a sudden you just hear A-Rod out there blasting out the score in the fourth inning.
Move on, Jeremy. Move on.
I had to. So as I was saying before, James reminded us of some of our favorite commentators in sports. The 2022 Major League Baseball season has been one of the most historic for multiple reasons. A lot of milestones have been achieved. Some of them as obvious as Aaron Judge passing Roger Maris for the most home runs in the American League for a single season, Albert joining the 700 home run club, and then even ones hiding like Miguel Cabrera reaching his 3,000th career hit because he plays on the Tigers and nobody gives a crap about that team. And then let's not forget that Reed Detmers and multiple team no-hitters were pitched this year. Verlander became the 138th pitcher to amass over 3,000 career innings pitched. And Zach Greinke started his 500th career game in this past June for the Kansas City Royals. And to play 500 career games and a lot of them being with the Royals, it says a lot about somebody.
I think back to the Justin Verlander thing. I think it's crazy to think that he could go from Tommy John to Cy Young this year.
Yeah,
I mean, he had an outstanding year.
He's the Cy Young winner. I mean, if they don't give it to him, they should fire everybody and start over.
They should do that anyway.
I was gonna say I do feel that he will definitely get the AL Cy Young award because his stats are just unbelievable. Because it's not even just that he came back from Tommy John surgery. It's the fact that he came back from Tommy John surgery and has pitched at the level he has.
Yep.
He is just shut down bad. And I believe it or not, maybe this is just my opinion. You know, for a team like Houston that usually gets all the attention in baseball, besides like the Yankees and Dodgers, as far as attention goes, Houston has not gotten a whole lot of it, I feel like. I feel like they've done a lot of things, but have not gotten as much attention. Maybe because a lot more of other notable things, whether it was the Juan Soto sweepstakes or the Aaron Judge chase, or now going into the last time they got this much attention is recently with Carlos Correa deciding to talk his mouth off.
Well, I think the thing that has helped Houston is who their manager is. I mean, I know that we think of Dusty Baker when he was with Cincinnati and the bickering matches that he and Tony La Russa would get into. Speaking of Tony calling it quits again.
Finally,
and it needed to be done. You know,
right.
We didn't want it to be under the circumstances, but at the same time, look,
it's time to go. You got to know when to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's like telling it to Ric Flair. At some point, you need to know when enough's enough.
Right.
If he keeps managing, he's going to get a third DUI, and then he's going to go to jail.
Yeah.
Ooh. But
you were saying, James.
Go back to Dusty Baker. I think, as much as Cardinal fans, as we used to hear him bark when he was with the Cubs and with the Reds, and even when he was with the Giants and burning out his bullpens and whatnot. I think Dusty being the manager in Houston has been the best thing that happened to that ball club, because when you came off of off of garbage can gate, if you will, and all those issues there, like Dusty handled everything well. Like he was kind of able to, I guess, put things into perspective. They get rid of Brad Ausmus and all that issue down there. And of course he moves on, and their manager that they also had, I can't think of his name. He moved on as well. He was the one that was busting up the TV screens or the big TVs and stuff in the clubhouse and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
You know who I'm talking about. I can't think of his name. It's not important. But I think that's probably the best thing. And that's why we haven't heard anything out of Houston, is just because Dusty Baker has them playing good baseball. And it's like,
AJ Hinch.
Yes, thank you. It's put your head down, play the game, and, stay away from the extracurricular stuff. Just head down and going forward. I did want to ask both your opinions really on this Aaron Judge thing. It was nice to see him get 62 last night. What did you think about him being 4/100ths of a point out of winning a batting title and possibly the American League Triple Crown, only to be sat out of today's lineup by Aaron Boone? Did you see that?
Well,
Damn.
I don't know why it happened. I think he's got to play. I think he's got to play for history's sake,
Right.
for his season's sake. I mean, he's probably not going to make up 4 points, but still got to play him.
Yeah, you got to play him. And go ahead, Sadie. No, you're good.
Do you need to rest him? Because tomorrow's an off day.
Yeah,
And they've got a bye. The Yankees have a bye anyway.
I was gonna say it's not like they have to play Friday. They're off for a while. The Yankees are the top team in the American League. They get to rest.
That's true.
Right.
I mean, so yeah, that's an even better point is the fact that it's not like they have to play in the wild card. Yeah, so okay, it's awesome that he got to 62 home runs. You know, I don't like how many people have had to make such a big argument over the legitimacy of his record, because this is the thing. The only thing people can argue, they can argue all they want about Barry Bonds and 73. They can argue, let them have that. But my thing is, Roger Maris, him hitting 61 home runs in a season was legit. It was legitimate back in 1961. But he faced hell for it. He faced so much controversy. Fans were throwing chairs out of the bleachers at him because they did not believe that he should have the record instead of their iconic, beloved Babe Ruth. Flash forward all these years, Aaron Judge, without a shadow of a doubt, in the full season, hit 62 home runs well before even the last game happened. And he's on the verge of getting the Triple Crown. I mean, he was leading in everything that you needed. And yeah, to sit him out, I don't agree with it, because think about this. That could go down as one of the greatest statistical seasons in baseball history. If you win the Triple Crown and have 62 home runs, possibly more if you had hit any today. Yep. I mean, I don't think could really get much better than that other than to hit 74 home runs.
Well, I think going back to the legitimacy of the record, I think Jeff Passan said it best. And he's like, look, he goes, we know Barry used PEDs and he hit 73 home runs, but still 73 baseballs left the park. He goes, it doesn't color it any differently. Bonds, still hit those home runs, and Judge still hit 62 and broke Maris's record. And I was listening to Mike Greenberg on ESPN radio earlier today. And, it's like he felt like he had to defend Judge breaking Maris's record. Like, I mean, the callers, it got pretty rough. And I'm sitting there thinking, look, I understand for history's sake. And of course, I'm sure these are a lot of New Yorkers that hold Maris deep into their heart. And of course, Maris's son hasn't done himself any favors by coming out and saying, well, Aaron Judge should be the real home run record holder, whatever.
Yeah.
But, still, I understand. PEDs are PEDs. We had this discussion when we had Sadie on the first time about how PEDs were used back, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in a different manner. It doesn't matter. You still have to have the hand-eye coordination to hit the ball out of the park. So I'm with Jeff Passan. It doesn't color it any different. They're both records. They're both important. They're both historical references for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I think yeah, go ahead, Sadie.
I said basically the same thing when people were crapping on Pujols, hitting 700 and talking about fastballs down the middle from a left-handed pitcher. And I was like, a left-handed pitcher could throw you 50 fastballs, 90 plus mile an hour fastballs down the middle, and you're not hitting it out of the park. So shut up.
Exactly. Right. Especially at 42 years old. Like, that's another thing. And
do we really know Albert's 42? Hell, he could be 45. Remember where, coming over and the age?
I do remember that. Okay. You know what? 42, 45, 61. I don't know. He looks great.
I do want your thought on something. And I had this question asked to me the other day, and my answer was no. If Albert sticks with the Cardinals, say until 2014, 2015, and then leaves and then comes back, my personal belief is he doesn't get the 700. What are your thoughts?
That he doesn't get the 700.
I think the DH saved his career going to the American League. I really do.
Yeah,
I
you're
think
probably right.
the DH saved it, and that's another reason I feel like that was the big thing about him leaving, because he was obviously slowing down. He was dealing with injuries, so it was perfect to where he was still going to play a long time, but the American League had that place where, hey, I can't be at first base all the time. And so, here, we'll just have you at DH. Everything works out fine. I do think, though, one thing he I don't want to say he's lucky to get to 700 because it takes so much skill, stamina, durability to get to a mark like this, especially like I've said, we're probably never going to see it again by another player.
We're not going to.
And I look at it and I say, he would already been well past it, and he probably would be past Babe Ruth by now, had it not been for the COVID shortened season.
Bingo. That's where exactly what I was going to say.
If COVID didn't happen or the season like that didn't happen, Pujols is way past 714.
Right. Yep.
Like, because you look at the seasons, we talk about his struggles with the Angels. I look at it as it wasn't as much him struggling, it's just the team sucked ass every year. But he's still got about 25 home runs a year. There were years he still hit over 100 RBIs. As the last 3 or 4 years with the Angels, yes, his production dipped. And then COVID hit, and I almost just want to say to myself, look, that year was just unbelievably bad for everybody.
He had, in that Angels lineup, he had no protection. So why am I going to pitch to him? Because the guy behind him is not going to hurt me. So I'm just going to put his ass on first base. There's no use in, me throwing him, pitching to him and see what happens. I mean, Mike Trout was all they had. And those were years too where Trout couldn't stay healthy, and so, I mean, I really think that I'm with you. Obviously you don't have the COVID shortened year. And I wonder if he does have such a big year in 2020, if we don't have COVID, obviously that changes everything. Does he come back? Does he just stay in Los Angeles?
I think he was coming back to St. Louis for his last year, no matter what.
I think so. I think, first off, I will say this. At the very least, he would not have finished his career in an Angels uniform. I think joining the Dodgers was a big boost for him mentally, let alone anything else. Obviously, he did great with the Dodgers in the year he was there, or half a year he was there, but it rejuvenated him mentally. And he said that at Dodger Stadium, like they helped him revitalize and made him love baseball again, almost. And so, but he knew there was unfinished business here.
Well, and it was one of the
just
things.
Fitting.
Remember last week, Jeremy, on my big tirade where I was defending John Mozeliak. That's one of the things, like, and Albert has even talked about it. Mo is the one that actually initiated the contact and the conversation to get Albert back to St. Louis. And I wonder if Mo doesn't make that phone call, and I don't think there was not a doubt in the world that he wasn't going to pick up the phone and call Albert. Where would have he ended up? Because if he doesn't come back to St. Louis, he probably stays with the Dodgers, or at least tries to stay with the Dodgers.
Yeah. Sadie, I want to ask you this question. Jags history put it on. Should our Pujols be considered the GOAT in baseball?
Nope. He's not even close.
Close. And I know that type of question, and I never like asking them, let alone answering them. If you had to put a couple names in that realm, who come to mind first?
Ruth, Mays, Cobb, Musial.
There you go. I've maintained, if I had to pick somebody to be the greatest baseball player of all time, I would have picked Willie Mays. That's who I would pick because he excelled at literally everything. He was great on the base paths. He was a fantastic hitter. He was an amazing fielder. Off the field, he was just a great all-around guy, or is just a great all-around guy. I mean, Willie Mays, to me, epitomizes what you want out of a franchise player. You could say the same for Stan Musial. I feel like, but there's something about Willie Mays, I feel like, that the Say Hey Kid just there's an aura around him when it comes to baseball. He's one of those first guys you think about when you think of baseball history.
Well, there's one thing that he didn't do that somebody else did well that keeps him out of the number one spot for me. And he wasn't the best pitcher in the league at one point. And that's Ruth has always been my top guy because he was the best left-handed pitcher in the game, and then he was the best left-handed hitter in the game.
That is very true.
But Mays is really close. And you know, everybody's used to the pictures of big fat Babe Ruth running around the bases in fast motion on his little spindly legs. But that wasn't Ruth early in his career. That wasn't Ruth in the early 20s.
Right.
And Ruth had speed. Ruth could steal bases. He just didn't need to because he hit home runs all the time. And when you're on a team like the Yankees of the 20s, nobody was stealing bases anyway.
Well, and you know what's funny? You talk about Babe Ruth and stealing bases. The one time he tried to steal a base ended the World Series. And to this day is the last time a World Series ended by a caught stealing, which I never, I'm not going to act like Babe Ruth wasn't great at base running because he was, but I just found it amazing. Like, of all the ways the 26th World Series could have ended, it was Babe Ruth getting caught stealing. Yeah. Like, I think that's just something that also goes down in history. You know, when Albert hit 700, when it hit his 700th home run a couple weeks ago, I told, hang on one second. So I told a bunch of people, I said, look, as far as our generation goes, as far as the past 25 years go, you know, there's a lot of top guys you can think of. You got your Derek Jeters, your Albert Pujolses, you got your Mariano Rivera's, your Randy Johnsons, you even got your Barry Bonds in there. I don't know of a more consistent guy than Albert Pujols.
Yeah, there wasn't. I mean, the first 10 years of his career are unbelievable. They're Ruthian type numbers. Ted Williams had that kind of career. It's unfathomable. The beginning of his career was ridiculous.
Do you think, though, here's an interesting one. James had kind of brought it up earlier about Pujols sticking around with the Cardinals past 2011. Now, a lot of the reason he left, you know, it's not like he got into a big fist fight with somebody in the locker room. It was financial reasons. You know, he wanted more and the Cardinals weren't going to offer him this much. You know, it is what it is. It's sports. If Pujols did stay, though, do they resign Molina when the time comes?
Oh, I think that you have to. I mean, I don't think you could have not signed him. You know, it's probably the best case scenario for the franchise that Pujols didn't sign here and he went off somewhere else because, you know, they won a championship without him and they've kind of been able to revamp the team a couple of times. Maybe they don't have that kind of money if they're paying Pujols $30 million a year for the rest of his career. So, you know, I don't know. It's in hindsight, it might have been a really good thing that he left.
Right. And that 2013 team was right there, and they should have definitely won that World Series. And I think you had a great nucleus of the 2011 team that meshed into the 2013 team. And I always say one of the most tragic cases in baseball is the rise and fall of Alan Craig. It was heartbreaking because this guy went from like MVP style play to just, you know, AA minor league injured reserve or injury list, and, you know, kind of faded out. And it was heartbreaking to see because he was one of the key pieces that was built alongside guys like Molina, Pujols, and then Matt Holliday. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it played out, I think.
Yeah. Alan Craig he was awesome for a year and a half. He was one of those guys, if there was somebody on base, you'd probably just want to hit him or walk him.
And I was going to say, in some case, or stick your cleats up there and hit him, kick him while he's down.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most iconic freaking plays when everybody knew it. Alan Craig was hurt. They weren't going to pitch run him. But Alan Craig, he's just running. He's going as slow as he can and as fast as he can at the same time. We got another question here from Jared. What happens to the Cardinals' status next season? Do you think they'll still be at a good standing level without Yachty, Pujols, and possibly Adam?
I mean, I don't think they're at a good standing level right now because their pitching is a disaster. Their starting pitching is a disaster. I do think that they're going to have to find their own identity next year. You know, all the young kids came up during a season when it was all about Molina and Pujols and Wainwright. So they're going to have a lot to prove. They're going to be trying to find their own identity as a team. They may be good. You know, it's hard to top the season that all the, you know, Donovan and all the young guys have had on the team this year, because they're seeing history firsthand. They're a part of history. But I think they might be okay if they can get some pitching. There's a lot to be said for young kids that haven't learned how to lose. You know, it's a lot of, you'll get like teams like Tampa Bay. They don't have any idea how to lose. They just know how to play the game and enjoy it.
And then you got guys like on the Tigers and Pirates that don't know how to win.
Well,
you know, there was a stat. Bill DeWitt had brought this up. Bill DeWitt Jr. had brought this up during the retirement ceremony, or not so much, the farewell like celebration for Molina and Pujols at the home finale. And he said that there has been a baseball Hall of Famer in a Cardinal uniform at some point every year since 1909. What do you make of that?
Meaning that
at some
Hall
point,
of Famer in a Cardinal uniform every year.
So at some point every year since 1909, one of the players that were on that Cardinals roster eventually made the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Wow, that's unreal. I guess that's now since Ted Simmons got in a couple of years ago.
Yep.
Because they didn't have much. Wow, that's unreal.
Like, to really put that in perspective, I mean, there's some teams that maybe only have one or two Hall of Famers in the Baseball Hall of Fame in general. But to think the Cardinals, and then you look at the stats of like how long it's been since the Cardinals were in last place in the NL. And, you know, you got teams that have maybe it's been since the 70s or 80s. And then you go to the Cardinals and it's been since 1918, I believe.
Right.
Or somewhere around there.
Well, a Cardinals player on the roster, it's a Hall of Famer every year since 1909. That's 30 years before the Hall of Fame opened. That's pretty impressive. I mean, the election started 36, but they didn't open the building until 39.
Right.
That's unreal.
And we just have James back here. And James, I got to ask you the question. I was just going to say, I just wanted to bring up what I brought up to Sadie, and it is completely mind-blowing for me to even say it, let alone like truly fathom it. Okay. So every year since 1909, at one point or another, a Cardinals player on that roster is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But really think about that. And Sadie brought up the great point that the Hall of Fame wasn't even built yet. Like the election didn't happen until 36. That was when the first election took place.
Right.
So, you know, you're going back almost 30 years before that. And there was still at least one person on the Cardinals that would eventually make the Hall of Fame.
I think it just shows you the historical value and just how legendary certain franchises are.
Yeah.
And I think there are three franchises that stick out or stand out in Major League Baseball: the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Cardinals, in terms of just the history there and the lineage and how far the talent goes back. What, you know, just in terms of Hall of Famers now, and that's not to leave guys out like Jim Palmer or Tom Seaver or those guys that played on other organizations. I'm just talking about the number of players from the Dodgers, Yankees, and Cardinals that made that impact, that were so good and so valuable that they ended up being Hall of Famers. And I mean, look at the Dodgers now. I mean, you've got guys like, whether or not they're going to be Hall of Famers, but you've got guys like Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts there, and Yankees with obviously Aaron Judge, and, you know, you just think, I mean, those guys at some point in time, if their career trajectory continues to go up, they're going to be Hall of Famers as well.
Yeah.
Well, and I know that you look at the guys. I mean, you talk about historical legacies. So we take into account, like you said, the teams, the top three, the Dodgers, Yankees, and Cardinals. Because I mean, when you are struggling to even have distributing jersey numbers because you've retired so many, I think it speaks volumes of how not only how historically successful the franchise is, but on top of that, how much you care about the players in your franchise.
Right.
It's fun to pick fun at the Yankees because they're the billion-dollar or the multi-billion-dollar team. They're the head honchos when it comes to spending money. But at the same time, they know how to treat their legends. And I feel personally that if there's one guy on that team, and I don't know how you guys, if you guys think, but if one guy should be in the Hall of Fame that's not, and that's been in the Yankee uniform, it's Thurman Munson. Or at least I feel like if his career wasn't as short as it was because of his tragic death.
That's tough. I was going to say maybe not statistically, but just his impact on the game. Yes. I mean, that's a tough one. I think you and I, Jeremy, have debated this one before, and not really debated it, but just kind of thrown it out there into the universe. And I think we were both kind of came to terms of the fact that we both thought he should be a Hall of Famer, but I just don't know if his numbers back it up. But I mean, he had an impact on the game. I mean, maybe not the same as Roberto Clemente, but Clemente didn't have a long career. His was cut short because of the plane crash. It's hard to quantify when a career is ended so quickly and in such a sharp fashion. I mean,
well, yeah, because at the same time, here's another way to put it in perspective. Obviously, playing in baseball a long time is a massive accomplishment. Playing in baseball in general is a massive accomplishment. Just like Sadie playing in softball, is a massive accomplishment.
Right.
The way I look at it like this, look at Jamie Moyer. Jamie Moyer played against about 10% of every player in the history of baseball. He pitched and played for and against approximately 10% of everybody in the history of baseball. But then you look at his stats. Yeah. Nothing spectacular, and he's not going to get in the Hall of Fame. And if he ever is, it'd be like the Veterans Committee type thing. But even then,
we're having this conversation, and you could put Yadier Molina's name in there because his offensive statistics do not stand out to you. But the fact that his longevity and the fact that defensively he was a stud should put him in the Hall of Fame easily.
I think Yadi's a Hall of Famer because I consider him the greatest defensive catcher. And on top of that, believe it or not, he's also the last of a dying breed, and that dying breed is playing every year for one team.
Well, here's the other thing. Don't get me started on this. And me and you have had this talk about this automated strike zone bullshit that's coming in, which is going to take away the worth and the how much a defensive catcher matters to your team, because you're not going to need catchers to frame pitches anymore. You're not going to need, and no matter what anybody thinks, Yadier Molina's rapport with a lot of these umpires probably steals him some calls. Absolutely. Trust me, I can't speak to this, but I can speak to this. So I refuse to put I plead the fifth on that part. But still, the point being, and you know what I'm saying, the rapport matters too. So you're going to bring in a computer in there, so you're just going to get some big Mongo that can hit 35 home runs that has absolutely no defensive prowess whatsoever behind the plate, because it's not going to matter. So the defensive statistics that we used to value so much, they're going to be useless.
Okay, go ahead, Sadie.
He's got a pitch comm, so he's not calling pitches. All he's going to do is put the right fingers down. It's going to be a dying position. And just to talk about the automated umpires, part of what makes baseball great is that it's romantic.
Thank you.
If you take that out, no one knows who Don Denkinger is. If you have a replay on that call, a video replay on that call, what are we going to talk about all winter? This guy got this amount of money and that guy got that amount of money?
Same thing with Jim Joyce.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jeremy, how many times Jeremy, how many times in the last 2 weeks have I said, how can you not be romantic about baseball?
I thought of you as soon as Sadie said it. It's true. But I'm going to say this. Normally, I'm not going to defend MLB on this, but you can't look at me with a straight face and tell me if these two walked onto the field to be the umpires, you would not enjoy a little bit of it. I'll admit, I would enjoy that.
I just threw up in my mouth. You honestly hate me, don't you?
Oh, you know what? You know the swipe or no swiping one last week was golden, and
that
you
was
damn
good.
well know it. But nevertheless, yes, the whole thing, the robot umpires, you talk about takes out the romance, it takes out the emotion. Baseball is that it's called the America's pastime for a reason, because you tell such a great story with it.
Players are not perfect. How could you expect umpires to be perfect?
Right.
Exactly. I mean, I expect umpires not to suck as much as they have lately, aside from you, James. You've been good, but everyone else, no. Yeah, no. But in all seriousness, yes, umpires make mistakes as part of the game. I mean, I've been going to Cardinal games since I was 3 years old. The amount of times I've either been at home or at Busch Stadium watching a game with my dad and hearing him yell at the umpire because he missed a bad call or made a bad call. I mean, that right there. You can't do that if there's some robot just sitting behind a catcher. It doesn't work that way.
People will stop paying attention to every pitch.
Yeah, they will. And, I already feel like people are off put by a lot of the things that Manfred has tried doing to shorten the game. I put shorten the game because just because you are trying to shorten the time, first off, if a game goes 18 innings, it goes 18 innings no matter which way you look at it. But also, I mean, you got the pitch clocks, you got the ghost runners, you got all this stuff. And I'm just like, at what point is enough enough? So that's what I'm going to ask you guys. When is enough on trying to damage the game?
When?
Go ahead, Sid.
Ask the NHL, because they played with that game so much that it killed it. Yep. It's dumb. It's not as exciting as it was now anymore.
I think they took a lot of the emotion out of that too.
Yeah.
That's
New Jersey, but
right. That's the thing I like about watching old, and when I mean old, I don't mean like necessarily like 1960s, our vintage games. I love watching older games because there just seems to be so much more emotion. There's so much more weight into it. And on top of that, I'm not going to lie, I feel like the crowds enjoyed it more back then too, because there was less meddling in it.
You don't have to go that far back either. Go back to the mid-90s.
That's what I mean. That's why I don't mean old.
The Blues and Red Wings, even the early 2000s, but when you had the Red Wings and Avalanche rivalry, you had Claude Lemieux and Chris Draper, and you had Patrick Waugh and Chris Osgood ready to beat the hell out of each other. You're right, and they continue to tinker with the game. I mean, they put in some new rules this year that will actually help the officiating and should help clear some things up. But still, I mean, you look at the back to baseball in the comparison, pitch clocks, and you can't throw over this amount of times, and you have to throw the pitcher has to throw the ball, was it 20 seconds when there's or with a runner on, and 15 when whatever. I mean, at some point in time, and I've said this for a long time, if I'm going to a sporting event, especially a baseball game, there's a reason I'm going there. I want to get lost in the game. I want to get lost in the atmosphere. I don't want to be looking at my watch continuously wondering, oh, geez, I wish this game was 35 minutes faster so I could get home. No, I'm not. There's a reason I'm there. I want to enjoy it. I don't care about time. And look, this is going to tinker with pitchers too. And we were talking about the Hall of Fame thing. Like, I mean, how many pitchers that would be borderline Hall of Famers because now they're rushed to throw a pitch so I get my sign. I'm not throwing the pitch that I've been given with conviction because I'm rushed. And you're going to give up what? Our home run number is going to go up. You've got bigger bases now. Our stolen base number is going to go up because that affects the pitch too. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, how much is too much? we're past it. We're way past it.
I think
Stand Rob Manfred.
The part that I feel that of all the rule changes and potential rule changes, one that I think really stuck a knife right in the heart of the game, the minimum 3 batter rule.
Oh, Jesus.
For pitchers. I mean, you know how many games we used to watch where you put in a pitcher literally for the reason of getting this key guy out.
Yep.
And then, okay, you did your job. We're going to get you out of there. But now you have to plan ahead for whatever potential lineup is going up and then getting a bullpen guy out there for the heart of the order. But they may not be ready for all 3 of those guys.
Ask the Philadelphia Phillies if they want to see Genesis Cabrera in this series. Especially Bryce Harper and Didi Gregorius. Remember that three player minimum stuff. I mean, that could have gotten one of them seriously hurt.
It really could have. And here we go. They're bringing out there that he just thinks they got to get rid of the instant replay in all sports. And I feel that the only one that they should have challenges on is in football. I don't see. It's weird. When I was at the game on Sunday, the Cardinal game, and we waited and sat there for X amount of time and the umpires had their, the speakers, just like referees at an NFL game do. And they're like, the call on the field stands. He was safe at second. I'm like, this is so weird to really think of happening at a Major League Baseball game.
The only thing that should ever be challenged, or not even challenged, but replayed in sports in the Big Four are scoring plays. Plays that would affect directly the score of the game. That's it.
Yeah. Sadie, what do you think on that?
I don't know. I mean, I understand. Well, let me say this. They've started changing all these rules in baseball, and they've tried to speed it up and all this kind of stuff. And they're married to the fact, to the idea that numbers in baseball are down. They're not making as much money as they should because the game is boring. Well, to me, it's they haven't sold their product properly. If they learn how to sell their product, people won't care that a game is 3.5 hours. I mean, they tried to say that in Hollywood too. You can only do 90 minutes because no more than 90 minutes, no one's going to care. And then movies started coming out that are 2 hours and 3. Some of them are
Gone with the Wind,
and people eat them up. People, they love them. Nobody's going to the movie theater like they were anymore, but they're still consuming Hollywood product. And because they sell it, and Major League Baseball has failed for decades in selling their product.
Yeah, nobody cares if an NFL game is 3.5 hours long because they know who Aaron Rodgers is and Tom Brady is, and because those guys they're visible everywhere. When Major League Baseball did the thing with the Subway commercials, and I think it was Ryan Howard, Mike Trout, there was one more slugger, and I can't remember who it was. Anyway, but when you were doing that and putting that was a start.
Yes,
that was just a start, and then they let it go.
Yeah, they didn't follow through.
I mean, it's funny because we see it locally. Like you could be watching a Blues game and see a commercial with Ryan O'Reilly and Pat Maroon, or Ryan O'Reilly and David Perron when he was here, or these commercials that have had Yachty and Waino in them that have been absolutely hilarious.
Oh yeah,
and I'm sitting there thinking like that's locally. If you could sell guys like Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, or guys like Javier Baez and Jose Altuve or whatever. I mean, hell, you could put Altuve's picture on one of those roller coaster signs that says you have to be this tall to ride. Yeah. But I mean, just have the players out there. I mean, Mookie Betts could make a killing in Los Angeles. And I understand people will say that baseball, it's a regional sport. Well, I get that. But nationally, you still have stars that play on these regional teams that you could blow the game up, and Major League Baseball they don't do it correctly.
And next year is a perfect opportunity for them to start doing some type of national campaign to expose people, to expose players to the entire country, to show that. See, I think MLB is. Let me finish one thought. Because they're going to everybody plays everybody next year, so people are going to be spread across the whole country. But MLB is almost like WWE. They keep everything in their own platforms. They don't branch out. If you go on MLB's website, there's tons of stuff that makes you want to watch baseball. But who goes on MLB's website? The real fans. They need to take some of that and put it out nationally and show people that it's not just a boring game, or, where people just waste time and scratch their butts and spit.
Right.
Yeah.
And to build off that point, here's the other thing. If you want to be successful doing that, for the love of God, get rid of blackouts. It's 2022.
That I can't believe still even exists. The NFL, because I remember when the NFL had blackouts, and
We did in St. Louis all the time with the Rams.
You got that right. But at the same time, the NFL was smart enough to eventually get rid of that.
Right.
Because here's the perfect example, and then Jared has another question for us. So back in 1973, when the Dolphins beat Washington in the Super Bowl, that capped off their perfect season. What if I told you guys that Super Bowl was blacked out in Miami?
Because it was.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Like, imagine today a Super Bowl being blacked out in a market. You couldn't do that. So
go ahead, Sadie.
I think Garo Yepremian was probably happy that it was blacked out in his hometown.
I know President Nixon was happy it was blacked out too.
See, I can't talk about football now, but I know a lot about older football. I can't do it now.
No, you're good.
So here's the thing with the NFL and their blackouts. I mean, you still have them because, like with Sunday Ticket, which thankfully is moving off to a different platform next year, hopefully Apple Plus. Yes, no doubt, because the first 3-4 weeks have just been a freaking train wreck with Sunday Ticket. Anyway, and they don't show games that are broadcast nationally because obviously those are over the air, whether it's on Fox or CBS. But and that's another thing the NHL needs to get away from too, is blackouts. So living in Northwestern Kentucky, if I want to watch a Blues game, which I would like to watch all of them, I get Bally Sports Midwest over the air cable wise. But if I use Bally Sports' app, it pings me closer to Nashville. It means I get the Predators games and the Blues are blacked out. So, that's another thing. We're 2022 and it's, especially if you're going to be playing everybody, which means all 4 major sports will for the most part, you got to get rid of blackouts. That's how you sell your game.
Yeah.
So Jared brought up the question, kind of going back to the whole baseball rule changes and why Manfred sucks. How do you feel about the pitch clock for 2023, and do you feel that the rule will last long in MLB? Sadie, I'm going to start with you on that one.
I think it's stupid. I got a lot of other words for it too, but I'm trying to keep it clean.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's completely unnecessary. Most pitchers don't take that long anyway. And yeah, I think it's going to last because Manfred wants it and he's the guy. James?
Well, I blew out us being clean in the first 6 minutes of the show earlier tonight when we were talking about our football teams. But I agree. I think it's ridiculous, but I also think it will stick around. And I really, we've kind of said everything there really is to say about it. This is one of those rule changes that I don't think we need. That's one of the reasons I loved baseball so much growing up. Every sport other than baseball had a game clock on it or a shot clock. Baseball didn't. It was just a natural organic feel of like, we're going to settle this game no matter how long it takes. We're going to have a true winner. And you got rid of that when you had the stupid ghost person on second base. Now, I get why they did it back in the COVID year. Get rid of it. But, it's funny. We think of the pitch clock, and there's the only 2 pitchers I can think of that it's going to affect are Dakota Hudson and Giovanni Gallegos.
So I think, first off, obviously, I think the rule's stupid. And it's going to, and I concur. I think it's going to last because, as Sadie said, Manfred's not just going to give up on a rule after 1 year. Now, and to put it in perspective, and here's I like this one. You guys will know this one for sure. Al Herbaki would not like the pitch clock at all.
He had a lot of moving parts he needed to control too. So.
Exactly. So there was a lot to him, and and that's more the thing. Imagine, okay, in basketball you got a shot clock based off your possession. In football you got a play clock based on snapping the ball, and getting back to the huddle. Imagine in hockey, every time you got the puck, you had X amount of time to try to shoot it on goal. Mm-hmm. And if not, then you get a penalty,
the Blues would violate that all the time. That's why we all yell shoot at the games, right?
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. Like, imagine all the times when you pass it this way, then you pass it back to him, pass it this way. Imagine there was a clock that limited that. It takes away from the strategy of the game. Yep. And there's one more rule change. And then I want to get on with more about stuff going on with you, Sadie, actually. I
know what's coming, too.
Oh, yeah. So what do you guys think about banning the shift?
If you can't hit to the opposite field, go back to the minors and learn. That's it. It's ridiculous.
It's not wrong.
He's not. I just had to see Sadie's reaction.
So let me, on that basis, if you don't mind,
go for it.
I have to share a personal story. This happened a couple of weeks ago.
Oh boy!
And I'm at our middle school state tournament here, and I'm coming off the field, and I have a coach look at me, and he goes, "What does it say in the high school rule book about banning the shift?" And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? Like, it doesn't say anything in there. There's no rule against, and there shouldn't be one at the highest level of highest levels." He's right. And if you do want to shift against me, if you can't get a bunt down, how many times have we screamed for Matt Carpenter to do that? Or when it happens to Dylan Carlson, Newbar's done it. But some of these other players, it's like, if you can't figure out a way to outsmart your opponent, then get out of the game. I hate it.
It's dumbing down the strategic part of the game to make it more exciting.
And I'll be honest with you, Sadie, when the National League, when they instituted the DH in the National League, I hated that too. For some reason, I guess I'm just a traditionalist when it comes to it. And of course, now we look at it broad circle, like, boy, I'm sure glad we had that. Yeah. But, I've always been like, I felt like that took strategy out of the National League game. That's why I was ultimately a National League fan.
That was one of the things. That's why I was originally against it. Not realize, but also, and that was at the time where we didn't realize, hey, Albert's coming back. He's going to be a DH, and he can break the record.
That's what I'm saying.
If I knew that years ago, I would have said, yeah, bring the DH already. It was like you had to choose. Would you rather see Adam Wainwright hit home runs, or would you rather see Albert Pujols hit home runs? Well, Albert's a lot closer to 700 than Adam Wainwright is, so I'll take it.
There might have been times this year where I might have played Albert at first and had Wainwright be the DH.
I would have. I posted it on the Facebook page that they should have had Wainwright DH for Paul DeYoung, and I still stand by that. You know what? There you go. You don't have to have Wainwright pitch in the wild card. Put him on there as the DH. Okay, yeah. I'll take it. I'm sure he's won some Gold Gloves. He can field just fine. And then there was one more record that we didn't mention at the top of the discussion, and that was that, of course, Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright breaking the battery record for catcher-pitcher duo. And once again, first off, what's funny is, and my dad had brought this up, Mickey Lolich had recently done an interview where they asked him about that. And he said, well, first off, I'm surprised. I didn't realize the record wasn't broken yet. He's like, good for them. But one thing they can never take away from me is the fact that I beat Bob Gibson. And it reminded me of kind of the whole Brock Lesnar ending the Undertaker streak, and how no matter what happened, hey, look, I ended the streak. Yeah. But Mickey Lolich, it just cracked me up thinking, like, imagine being the guy who just had that in your favor, to where you were the one that beat Bob Gibson in perhaps the greatest pitched season in baseball history. Mm-hmm. where they literally, we talk about rule changes. They changed the rules because of Gibson being too good, not because to shorten the game, not because they wanted to try to get more people to tune in. No, because Bob Gibson was kicking too much butt. They had to lower the mound. Like 1.12 ERA, I don't think that's even going to get matched.
No.
It's just that type of stuff is just unreal to see, because there's records that can't be broken because of how the game is played today.
Right. Well,
but then there's records that that won't be broken because they don't get the chance to try to break them anymore.
Well, Jeremy, then we had talked about that once Yachty and Waino broke their record. Like the closest one was Kyle Hendricks and Wilson Contreras in Chicago.
Contreras is leaving.
105. Well, and look, don't expect Contreras to be in a Cubs uniform next year. So that's ultimately going to pause it, if not snap it all together. Yeah, it goes back to the longevity part that we talked about earlier tonight. You're just not going to see it anymore. There's too much. The free agency part of the game, money. Obviously we talked about it, like the load management, how catchers and players are kind of handled a little bit, I guess more carefully now with kid gloves, that, you're not going to push through it. I'm sure there's a lot of times where Yachty was behind the plate with Waino on the bump that Yachty probably shouldn't have been out there because he was dealing with some kind of ailment or whatnot. That's one that's not going to be touched either. Well, we're up to 328 now?
Yes, 328 is the record. So that's the new.
Yeah, nobody's coming close to that at all. I mean, especially with Hendricks and Contreras still they were at 105. So that's 223 right there. Away. Yeah, that's not happening.
Well, and you got to take into account it's a very substantial thing that they did, because when they were even the 60s and 70s, guys were still throwing 35 plus games a year.
Right.
And Wainwright doesn't know what that's about. The game changed, but they still were able to break the record, and it just makes it even more important, I think.
Yeah, like I said, it's part of that whole dying breed of sticking with one team for so long. Technically, you can't say that about Wainer because he started with the Braves, but we all know he's a Cardinal, so let JD Drew enjoy his Braves career.
Yeah, Waino's major league career was with no other team, so that's all that matters.
He became a Cardinal for life the minute he wasted Carlos Beltran.
And then Brandon Edge. Yeah.
And Brandon Edge. Oh, the Carlos Beltran strikeout will forever be one of the greatest strikeouts in history, because he just froze in place, which made it even funnier when he came back, when Beltran became a Cardinal.
Well, you remember what happened right before that in that game, that catch by Endy Chavez.
Yep.
That was a game changer.
Yeah, because it was a double play, because not only did he rob Scott Rowland, but he threw out Jim Edmonds, because Edmonds was already on the way to third.
So I would have been too. They did an interview with Edmonds, and we all know that Jim Edmonds loves to talk about himself. But they did an interview with him about that, and Edmonds said that when Rowland hit that right off the bat, he's like, "I'm just going to go into my trot." He goes, "That ball's gone," and he actually had to do a double take to make sure Endy Chavez caught that before he started on his way back. And then obviously you follow that up with what Yachty did later in that game, and
can't do it twice.
Yeah.
Can't do it twice.
Right.
So we're going to drift away from the baseball talk. And Sadie, since I got you here, this has been something that actually came up, I want to say a couple months ago. So it involves professional wrestling. Now, I don't know how it works, James, in like Kentucky and the Indiana area, but in Missouri, there is what is known as the Missouri State Athletic Commission, which regulates, wrestling, MMA, boxing, all these types of events. And for every wrestling show in Missouri, you have to have a representative of the State Athletic Commission there. And whereas in Illinois, if Sadie wanted to go put me through a flaming table right now, we could just drive over there and it would happen, no issue.
Want to?
Who am I to? 3 hours. I want to see this one.
I'm always down for a match. That said, there was recently, and like I said, just by a couple months ago, they imposed a tax increase. The Athletic Commission did on gate revenue. And they demanded exact head counts for every wrestling event and whatnot that took place. And we've seen firsthand how that affects us, and we know that's how it affects other promotions in Missouri. With that, not too long after that happened, many wrestlers started signing a petition to try to abolish the Missouri State Athletic Commission. And you were one of the first people I thought of because of it, because I know how passionate you are about the industry and how much, obviously you're an ass kicker, but you still care about people. Decently enough, except Rob Manfred, not him. But I wanted your opinion on the whole idea of even trying to get rid of at the end of the day, keeps people safe, which is what the point of the Athletic Commission is.
Well, yeah, it's the point of the Athletic Commission, but I don't think much of what it states in the handbook pertains to professional wrestling anyway. So I am not a big government person. I'm not really in for big government. I'm not for government at all, really.
Okay.
But I will say that I'm glad Missouri has an athletic commission. I have seen the state of wrestling in Illinois. I have seen the people that have worked there. I've seen people that I know are not safe either physically, mentally, or I mean, I know people that have hepatitis that get in a wrestling ring in Illinois and get cut open, bleeding all over the place.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not. There's a lot of safety issues, and there's a good amount of promotions in Missouri as it is. Well, in Illinois, there's 3 times as many because you just rent a building and do a wrestling show. Poof, So I like the regulations. I do think it keeps things somewhat safer, and I think wrestling shouldn't be something that just everybody on the street corner can do. I think that there should be some hoops that you have to jump through. In order to be a wrestler, you have to go through rigorous training for months. But in order to be a promoter, in Illinois, you just show up with a ring and you have a show. But in Missouri, you've got to, you got to get licensed, you got to have insurance, and there's a whole list of standards that they require. I think it should be that way. I don't think it should just be as easy as I'm going to have a garage sale next weekend. You know what I mean?
Right. And I know that's one thing, we've talked about, and I believe we talked about it when we had you on the show the first time, was that there was such an oversaturation of promotions in the metro area. And a lot of that stems from, because there's no regulations in Illinois, as serious as this type of thing is, I do make the joke with some of the guys that, hey, look, you can do whatever you want basically in Illinois. Missouri, you got to stick to the certain, because what do we do before every Dynamo show is we announce the representative, whoever it may be, from the Missouri State Athletic Commission. Whereas Illinois, there's nobody to announce because there's nobody there. Right on the river, there was no representative,
And, also with Illinois, a promotional start, guys run it together. Those two people clash. They don't like each other now. Well, one of them goes off, starts another promotion. Now there's 2 promotions. Everything's watered down. They're using the same people in the same general areas. They're trying to run shows in the same buildings. Over my whole career, it's been, well, that guy didn't like what that guy's doing, so now he's going to start a promotion. Now there's another one, and it's just like it just expands and expands and expands. Talk about the increase in tax. It's a knee-jerk reaction to something that's not the responsibility of the wrestling companies. The office needed more money to exist, so that's what they decided to do. And I don't think it was thought out. I think they just said, well, we'll charge them this, and that's whatever. But it was a response to, like I said, they're not making enough money, so they just hit everybody blanket across the board. And even in the city of St. Louis, when the push was to raise minimum wage to $15, they at least thought out how it would affect people that have 5 employees or 10 employees or whatever. And, I supported that, but I also knew that if I had to pay, I had a business at the time, if I had to pay that much money, it was going to kill my bottom line. It was my overhead was going to go through the roof. So I had to figure out some way to deal with that. But it's just like they hit the people that aren't the problem. So, and, in turn, ticket prices went up a little bit, and it's going to be fine. The thing that I'm concerned about is wrestling is based in fairs. We do Cinco de Mayo every year, and
Yep.
there'll be thousands of people at Cinco de Mayo. How are they going to tax that? Are they going to tax us for everybody that attended Cinco de Mayo? That's going to be like 10,000 people.
Right, because people come and go, as they please watching that.
Right.
We put on the event over the course of the day, or put on 2 events over the course of the day.
Right.
But, people just come and go, walk down the street, and then, hey, look, we'll stay for the show for a few matches, maybe come back later. But, like, we can't have somebody staying on top of one of the buildings with the binoculars counting every single person who's in attendance, because I've had to do this for Jim the first night that they had this tax increase. I had to go around. It was jams and slams. I had to go count every person that was there, and that included everybody that was far in the bleachers, everybody that was ringside. I mean, and you think at the end of the day, you take amount the ticket prices, then you take account how much for the wrestlers getting paid and everybody involved, how much that affects the promoters financially in the long run of everything.
Well, it's not going to hurt too much with just like house shows, because people have raised ticket prices. We raised it a couple bucks, so it's not going to really affect there. It's sort of passed on to the consumer, which is completely unfair. Not on our parts, but it's unfair that the consumer has been put in the position where now they have to pay more money because a government entity has said we don't have enough. But it's not like I can get on the internet and find out if that's true. I can't get in there and find out that the Missouri State Athletic Commission has $20,000 and they only need 10,000. Are they? Where's the money going? All that's a mystery. But it's almost like it was done like when a new Windows release happens. Microsoft goes, hey, here's the new Windows, and half of it doesn't work right, and then they fix it over time. It's sort of like they said, well, we're going to do this, and they didn't think about any of the issues. Even some of the state representatives, when we asked questions about it at shows right after it was passed, they were like, I don't know. We're just going to have to figure it out. And the word that I got was, at a certain time, they'll count everybody in attendance, and that's what they're going with.
Yep, that's what I was told as well.
Well, I mean, it's going to be Cinco de Mayo next year is going to be interesting, because there could be 600-700 people standing around that area, whether they're paying attention to wrestling or not. You've been there. You know how crowded it gets down that street.
Been there every year, and it's
been so crowded. They keep trying to move us down the road more to give more room for people to walk. So are they going to come back and say, well, you have to pay $500 or $600 in taxes? We get paid for that show, but we don't get paid a lot. It's for exposure, and it's going to eat up a chunk. It's going to eat up a large chunk of that money.
Yeah, because because the people that watch at Cinco de Mayo don't pay a ticket fee. That's the thing, the big takeaway. Because look, if you had 500 or 700 people paying for a ticket, it's like, oh, well, sweet. But no, these 500 or 700 people are watching. And one thing I do like about it, one thing I love about it actually, is that it keeps the old style of word of mouth alive, because it's like, hey, we're all at this big festival, and then you see this wrestling product out here, kind of pass on the word. It's just now what happens when the next Cinco de Mayo event comes. How are they gonna financially put the burden on and see what happens? Which,
we used to, with GCW, we did shows at Point Fest, so there'd be 20,000 people there. And how I think about that, like if that opportunity ever came up again, I'm sure we would jump on it. How are they going to tax that? I mean, that would be a nightmare, because the city of Maryland Heights does not want to give up any money. They're interested in how much money they can make off those events every single time. I almost want to do it there just to see how the athletic commission would respond.
I was gonna say, because Maryland Heights has about 28,000 people in it,
Yeah.
and then you take into account all the people in Maryland Heights and all the surrounding cities that come in for Point Fest. I mean, this is something that's not even just a regional thing. I mean, people travel for Point Fest.
Right.
It's a well-known event, and that's the first I even knew GCW used to do that, which I think that's actually pretty cool.
Those were cool. We put on shows. We would do matches in between all the bands.
Oh, there you go.
There were a couple of years where some guys were doing 4, 5, 6 matches a day on those shows. It was a lot of fun.
The event or the wrestlers?
The wrestlers.
Oh, wow.
Because we'd have 5 hours of wrestling we had to fill, and we had 15 or 18 guys. So somebody's working 4 or 5 times.
How did you feel about to detract away from the staff, because I wanted to definitely get your thoughts on that. It's been something I've wanted to ask you for a while now, because especially when that whole petition came up, I had talked to certain people, and they were like, no, at the end of the day, we do need the commission, because basically, to put it bluntly, none of us are trying to get hepatitis because of something going wrong,
Well, the people involved with starting that grassroots push to get the commission abolished have been doing it for years. They've been trying to do it for years, and they're not involved in wrestling. They're, it's unfair. It's whatever. It's unfair. But over the last 25 years or so, this has happened multiple times.
Oh, okay.
And it's all been about. It's only now, because the internet explodes and you can get stuff to go viral so easily on the internet, that it's kind of taken a little bit of root and people even know about it. But I mean, years and years ago, they were still trying to get rid of it for the same reasons.
It's just now every little thing can lead somebody to try to make a new push towards it.
Right.
Kind of like just taking advantage of a situation, almost like, oh, great, this is the next new thing we can use to try to get them booted.
Right.
So last week was, I believe, the 4th annual Riot at the River event in Grafton, Illinois. And Ricky Rodriguez became the new Riot in the River champion. How do you feel about the new champ?
Did you see the interview, the little promotional interview thing he did afterwards in the bar?
Yes.
It's fantastic. It's one of the best things I've ever seen. I was so entertained by it. What do I think of the new champ? I think he's a rising star. I don't want to say he's one of the young guys, because he's not as young as he thinks he is.
Right.
But he certainly is a rising star on the scene. I don't know how much I want to say here, but let's just say, okay, during COVID, everybody was like, okay, when you come out of COVID, what's it going to be that you spent your time on? And nobody wanted to be the person that spent their time on doing nothing during COVID. Everybody wanted to come out at the end of it with, this is what I did. I learned how to cook, or whatever it was. Ricky spent all of his time learning about wrestling. And we had training here and there. I wasn't real involved at the time. But Ricky watched hours and hours and hours and hours of wrestling at home, and watched promos and guys' characters, and worked on his own stuff. And I don't know that I've ever seen anybody develop more than Ricky did by not actually being in the ring.
So a lot of his development came from, he didn't even have to step in the ring. It was just kind of how he absorbed what he watched.
Yeah. Yeah. He learned a lot in a fairly short period of time without doing a whole lot in the ring.
And I know that one thing that I love about Ricky is that he attracts the crowd wherever he goes.
Yeah.
Wherever he goes, the crowd's behind him. And he's become a staple at Dynamo Pro.
Yeah.
With that, obviously, comes more attention from people that definitely have it out for a guy that has a belt, or a guy that has prosperity. So we get to guys Who's somebody that you feel, best way to put it, who's somebody that that Ricky Rodriguez should be on the lookout for? That's what you coming after him.
Well, you always need to look out for Snitch because who knows what that guy's going to do next.
Yeah.
Surge, ever since he decided he didn't like anybody anymore and he didn't want to be loved by the whole crowd, he's been, he's going to have to watch out for Surge. They had a very good match in Pacific. I don't know if you were there, but it was a really good match.
Yeah, I was there in
Great job.
Pacific. Pacific was a great show.
Yeah. Thinking of who else. His tag team partner, if Dion ever gets a chip on his shoulder, he could really turn some heads. He's already turned heads. But Dion, I think Dion's a really big, bright star in the making.
I've definitely seen a lot of growth in Dion. He's another guy, once again, Pacific, he got a great reaction. It was great seeing the mayor of Pacific actually at that show.
Yeah.
And she was really cheering him on. But no, Dion definitely is. You talk about guys that have accomplished or that have improved a lot and have learned a lot over just a short amount of time. And I think Dion really fits that profile as well.
Yeah.
And he and I had the pleasure of talking with him on that, and he credited you with a lot of it, just like from the dojo, from the Dynamo Pro dojo, and just a lot of the work that where he's gotten to today, not just with his wrestling ability, but just his character ability.
Yeah. Well, Dion had been training and everybody knew he was close and, close to debuting. And he came to a Concordia show and he was wearing this white jacket with this white hat. And he looked like a character, just the way he looked every day. And as soon as I saw him with that, I was like, that kid needs to be in the show now in any way we can get him in there. And we threw around several ideas, maybe make him a ref, and he was going to be a manager. And it just got to the point where we were like, you know what, let's just give him a shot as a wrestler in a good situation and see what happens. And he's capitalized on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's unfortunate he and Ricky came up short at the last Concordia show against the Lineage.
Yeah.
But I mean, then again, when you're facing Shadows and Big Vic, you don't really the odds aren't exactly in your favor.
And speaking of people that Rodriguez maybe should watch out for, Vic had a really nice singles showing at Ride on the River. 1-2 matches,
Yes,
got to
he
the
did.
finals. And I don't think Ricky is going to forget some of the stuff that Vic handed him that night either.
I think one thing, and don't get me wrong, I think he's a great. Him and Xavier Shadows are a great tag team, and of course, having Surge alongside them, they're the Lineage, and they don't mess around at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think when that time comes, Big Vic can definitely be a big time single star. I feel that not only does he have a strong moveset, but I just think he knows, like, he just draws so much attention to himself, and as far as being able to converse with the crowd, even if it's not exactly in the way you would want to converse with someone, he knows how to do it. He does it great.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And not to leave his partner out, I think if Shadows ever decides that he wants to leave the dark side and actually be one of our friends instead of a pain in my ass, I think he has the ability to really turn some heads as well. He's got so much talent. I've seen him in other places, and I was like, these guys they were much better than, I don't want to say the places they were working because I try not to crap on other companies, but they were much better than the opportunities they were being given.
And that totally makes sense. I think one thing we've learned when it comes to and it's just the way the business is. You can say it from any level, from any promotion, from any state, if it works out great in one area, that doesn't guarantee it's going to work out somewhere else. You just got to find that one place. I had stumbled upon this was an old Davey Richards match, and it got me into looking into some old Dynamo Pro history. And I talked about how Ricky Rodriguez has become a staple. Well, one guy that has been a staple of Dynamo Pro for so long is Ricky Cruz, the King of Chaos. And, he's brought that brotherhood with him.
Right.
What does Ricky Cruz truly mean to not just you, but to everybody at Dynamo? I mean, he means a lot to me. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him, I've gotten to know him over the years, but just his presence in that locker room, how do you feel it means, like, to have him there?
I mean, he's definitely a great influence on younger people. I mean, he's a great influence on everybody, not even necessarily younger people, but the guy's a fantastic wrestler. His matches are really. I never, as a booker, I never have to think twice about the match that I'm going to get when I put him in a situation. If I say, "Let's, Ricky, I'm going to get this guy to wrestle you," I know it's going to be solid. Ricky could probably wrestle a mop in the middle of the ring, and people would ask the mop for their autograph at the end of it.
I was going to say, and I can see, it reminds me of an old Triple H saying the mop could probably give him, could sell really well and give him a lot of good work.
Now, I saw Pete Madden wrestle a tree and got the tree over.
Oh my God.
I'm not even kidding. He wrestled
Pete Madden wrestling a tree.
Yep. And it was awesome. It was a great time. Everybody loved it.
I'm gonna have to find that match. That sounds really interesting.
And nobody thought, well, he's wrestling a tree. It's dumb. No, Pete was so good it didn't matter.
One more thing I wanted to bring up, kind of about Dynamo Pro and everything that's going on with them, as it's clear they've bounced back well from the pandemic, because every wrestling promotion in every state took a hit, because you can't do these local shows, and as time goes on and you're forced to be quarantined more, on top of that, I mean, some promotions went under. It wasn't just that they didn't have shows anymore. They went under, don't exist anymore. Dynamo, because they've built such a following around the area, was able to bounce back. One thing that changed, though, is the women's division in Dynamo Pro. And, it's just a few months ago that Reign Victoria relinquished the Dynamo Pro Women's Championship. Where does Dynamo stand when it comes to women's wrestling? I mean, you already know you got the Queen of Lariats, Ashlyn Alexander, who is a phenomenal wrestler. You got the Monarch, Maddie Exodus, who, gosh, she definitely proves size doesn't matter, because she go out there and give you a 10 out of 10 anytime you ask her to. But where does it stand on trying to get a more influx on female wrestlers and bring that title back to prestige?
It's on the horizon. I'm not going to go into too many details, but we've looked at a lot of stuff, talked to a lot of people. There are people that are not from the area that want to come here. There's some wrestlers from outside the area that are already signed to come back. Things were supposed to jump off a bit more at the last. Let me start over. Things were supposed to jump off a bit more at the September Concordia show, but circumstances happened and we had to cancel a couple of matches. So it's on the horizon. I would say that 2023 looks to be a pretty good year for the women's division. That title was basically created because we had 3 trainees that were women who we really wanted to push really hard. And it hasn't worked out the way we wanted it to. Savannah Stone doesn't live in the area anymore. Tootie is kind of blown up nationally a bit. She's with NWA and she doesn't do a whole lot of local stuff. And it kind of left Reign in the lurch as the survivor. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we had to find creative ways to get her involved in the show. And I wasn't sure what Reign's future was going to be, but it looks like she's back strong, stronger than ever in some cases. So I'm pretty excited about the women's division for 23, honestly.
Well, good. And where heading into 2023? Well, two small things. First off, are you ever going to hire protection for Chris Rodell because the snitch is after him every chance he gets?
You know, I threatened to light Chris Rodell on fire once, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember you threatened to light him on fire when I said I was going to do my first Dynamo Pro show as commentator.
Yeah.
Because
You
you
know
talk. Go
what?
for it.
Do you know that I gave him a present that was gave him a gas can as a present one time?
Oh
Did you know?
gosh,
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, in front of a live crowd.
Does it surprise me? No,
No.
but
Well, I mean, it's because I lit Brandon Aaron's on fire to win the title, and then I tried to light him on fire with lighter fluid on the next show, and
oh
that got
gosh.
interrupted. And then Chris Rodell kept talking, so I was like, "Well, I guess you're going to be next." Yeah.
And that's when you know it's a throwback when Brandon Aarons has to get involved.
Yeah.
That said, we also got a comment in from Robin Pearson. Sounds like Sadie. So
She knows me. She knows me a little bit. I kind of known her for a long time.
Oh gosh. And then the next thing I was going to bring up. So one thing that I've seen from a lot of other promotions, and this is something I've been meaning to ask Jim as well, because I know you, Jim, Crystal, all care so much about the industry. Wrestling is life, and you've all been together so long. We talked earlier about the word of mouth method, but then you see a lot of these promotions, these newer ones that are starting to air their shows more out there, like broadcasting them or just putting them on YouTube. I know I've put some on there to help Dynamo try to get some exposure.
Yeah.
You know, what plans in store do you guys have for that in order to help Dynamo Pro gain an even bigger audience?
I mean, I have ideas, and Jim has ideas. Crystal's got ideas. Everybody's got ideas for days. But it becomes a matter of juggling money, time, and personnel to see what we can get done.
Right.
There have been a lot of talk about putting a lot of the old footage out online. There's a lot of talk about. It's hard because I'm trying not to give away too many things that are.
No, I get you. If there's something that's like pops in your head that you don't want to give, be like, yep, nope, you're good.
Yeah. Jim and I own another company together. We own a screen printing company together. So I'm around him all the time. And if we're not complaining about how much the job sucks, we're talking about wrestling. So a lot of ideas get thrown around throughout the course of the week. A lot of times we're like, hey, that thing we were talking about last week? Yeah, that was not a good idea. But I really want to have a bigger social media presence. I want to have a bigger multimedia presence. I would love to see boutique content being created. I would like to see maybe a Patreon page. We've got 16 years of Dynamo footage. Is it 16 or 17?
17? Well, I was going to say, because the 15th anniversary show was just a few months ago, but there's more footage beyond that. Yeah. So.
And then we've got hundreds of hours of Gateway Championship wrestling footage.
Yep.
There's, and a lot of Dynamo people worked or started in Gateway. And there's, like Jackal, his first match was in Gateway.
Oh, wow.
And it's not out there anymore. It's mainly not out there because Ben was the owner of that company, Big Bad Ben, and we didn't want to disrespect him by using it without his permission or anything like that.
Right.
And, I'm sure there's some legal things that we have to go through since Ben's not here anymore, but there's hours and hours and hours of footage, or hundreds of hours of footage of all those old matches. And I know right where the tapes are, the original masters.
See, and that's another thing that's That's also a Sadie thing. Like you would know where the original masters and everything are. I can totally see that. Yeah, because I love doing the commentary, and I love to be a part of it is just in any way, shape, or form. Is just a great blast, and I just personally feel that the sky's the limit because you have a locker room where the personnel are passionate people. It's run by passionate people, and the wrestlers are talented, passionate people. So it's like you've heard of the triple whammy. Well, in this case, it's like the triple jackpot. And Concordia is home, and people always show out there. And I look forward to 2023 for Dynamo.
Yeah, I do too. I, you know, 2022 has been rough. We've run a lot of shows this year. There's really only one other company in the general St. Louis area that's run more than we have, and they run a weekly show, CHWA.
Yep.
But I don't know, what have we done? 20 plus shows this year?
We've done about 20, yeah. And I remember you said at the top of the year that we were going to have a lot more. Remember you and Jim said, because not only were we going to do Cinco de Mayo, we were going to do Ride on the River again. And we were going to do, there were months we were going to have 2 or 3 shows. You take all the ones in Arnold, then we were going to do Pacific. It's like it all adds up. And it reminds me a lot of James over there when he does all of his baseball tournaments, and he's doing multiple games at a time every weekend.
Right.
And it does wear on you.
Yeah, and when I think of like ideas for the future or what we're going to do or how we're going to structure shows or things like that, I'm not, October 21st, we have our next show. I'm already looking at January, what we have to do in January, February, March going forward. October was figured out a long time ago. The names and faces may change here and there, but the general idea of here's what we want to do on this date, we talk about that months ahead of time.
Well, there you go. That's good to plan ahead. Well, Sadie, actually, before I let you go, James, you have anything you'd like to ask? Say, Sadie.
I'm good. I've just kind of been listening. I've enjoyed having them on and having you on the couple times we've had on, and hopefully we have a nice long deep playoff run here. We can have you back on here in a couple of weeks or so, depending on how the playoffs end up.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And we do have one more thought from Jared before we let you go, Sadie. So he says he thinks Patreon would be a good platform for Dynamo matches, older and newer. I would definitely open my wallet to watch a video of Dynamo, especially to pass time by until the next show. But I know 2023 will be Dynamo's year.
I appreciate that, Jared. I mean, how cool would it be for a local promotion, basically like a mom and pop shop type promotion, because that's what we are, to have like a studio and a sound stage that we could do a talk show, or give Ricky Rodriguez a talk show, or have Stitch come in and
you already know I'd be down for the talk show format. Get me on there. I will. Right. I'd be the first to jump at that opportunity for you. So I look forward to it, and I know there's a lot working behind the scenes that you guys got to figure out, but I know it can be stressful to talk about and fun to talk about.
Yeah, it's always fun. And honestly, if it wasn't fun, I would quit. I just wouldn't be here. Because at the end of the day, and it's the same thing with softball. I mean, I'm passionate about winning. I love winning, and winning is very important to me. But if I go out there and have a bad time and win, it's not as much. I don't like it as much. I like to have a good time. It's volunteer work, to an extent. The stuff that I do for Dynamo is not going to make me rich at the end of the day. Maybe if somebody buys all the content and starts pumping hundreds of thousands of dollars in, that would change. But as it stands, I'm not going to get rich doing the things that I'm passionate about. So it has to stay fun. If it's not fun, I'm not interested.
I can relate to that totally. And I love the mindset because, we haven't made a whole lot with this, but we love doing it every single week. And at least I'm sure James over there loves it. If not, I think he has.
You already know the answer to that.
So. I know. I mean, who else is going to give you the platform to rant about John Mozeliak or for
Right.
John Mozeliak?
I was just going to say that he loves it. He has the platform to be able to go off. So
Before we
Right.
let you go, I've got another stat for you. This one will absolutely blow your mind.
Oh boy.
Albert Pujols ends his career with 1,405 extra base hits and only 1,404 strikeouts.
yeah.
God.
Well, for reference, through 12 years, Mike Trout has 1,353 strikeouts.
Yeah.
That's because today it's all home run or bust. You know, I call
there you
that the Randall Grichuk. You're either hitting a home run or you're striking out.
That's what we call the Tyler O'Neill algorithm.
Actually, you know what? We should probably call it the Mark Reynolds. That's
Ooh.
the perfect
No, his nickname was Whiff.
whiff. Yeah.
It should be.
You know how you go on, Sadie.
You were talking earlier about nobody will ever hit 700 home runs. It's pretty accepted that Trout is the best player, maybe one of the top few players in the league. He's only halfway there, and his career is over halfway done.
Right.
Well, and that's the interesting thing. And yeah, I definitely want to keep you on for this quick little tidbit. James and I talked about the 500 home run club. And the only one that's active out of them is Miguel Cabrera with 507. He's obviously not going to make it to 700. Nelson Cruz is next on the list of active players with 459. And then after him is Stanton. Now Stanton's at 378, but I mean he is already 32 years old.
Right.
So, you know, as far as young, and then like you said, you brought up Trout. Trout is technically 98th all time with 349 home runs.
It's 350 tonight.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, now he's tied for 97th with. Here's a name that you guys haven't heard in a minute, but I love saying it. Chili Davis. Tied with good old Chili Davis for 97th all time. But then you got these guys like your Joey Vottos, Cano, Longoria, Justin Upton, Goldschmidt. I mean, the guys that are on this list are already in their mid to late 30s, and a couple are in their earlies. So it's like to get to 7, let alone get to 500, will take years. But to get to 600 or to 700, like.
If it's going to happen, it'll be some hotshot prospect right now that is either his first year in the minors or is still playing high school ball as a freshman. I mean, seriously, it's going to take somebody who's coming up into a system in which they are familiar with the 3 true outcomes and they have the launch angle and all that other stuff and are just unbelievable hitters. And then you have to try to avoid injury and being in the right system. So I don't see it happening again. But yeah, anybody who's on that list now, it's not happening.
If they're on the list, because the home run leader list is the active, I think 300 people.
Yep.
Like the top 300 active.
Yep.
Or not active, but just in general. And all of these active players, you know, like I said, here's the others: Freddie Freeman, Andrew McCutchen, Harper, JD Martinez, Josh Donaldson. At the bottom of the list of the active players is Salvador Perez with 223, and he's 32 years old.
Speaking of Freddie Freeman, I've got another stat for you since we're at the end of the season. The Dodgers' Freddie Freeman and shortstop Trey Turner are the first teammates to lead the league in hits since Ichiro and Brett Boone did it for the Mariners.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and then
you can see what I
wondering,
spent my afternoon doing.
Right. Hey, it works. Now here's an interesting one. The most strikeouts by a batter. We talked about all these guys with strikeouts, and Babe Ruth struck out a lot. As Dad brought up, but it's interesting because the gentleman that has the most strikeouts is actually Reggie Jackson. Ugh. And you talk about how many home runs he hit and everything. He's like 549, I think. And yet, despite all that, I mean, holy hell, did he 2,597 strikeouts.
Swing hard in case you hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
think
So,
about this with Ruth. He had the most RBI, the most home run, the most strikeouts, and he hit 342
yep.
for his career. How do you
yeah.
strike out the most out of anybody and still hit 340?
You know, the final thought on this, and I'll say, like I said, about how I feel about Willie Mays, but I'll say this. When it comes to being an icon of icons in sports, it's Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
Like, there's just, because I feel like he's one of the first, kind of like how The Wizard of Oz is one of the first like films everybody will see before they're like 10 years old.
Right.
Babe Ruth is one of the first baseball players a kid will ever know about.
Yeah.
Well,
You don't turn 25 and then just hear about Babe Ruth.
Well, here's the thing. Think about that. You use the Wizard of Oz as a good comp there, because think about the movie The Sandlot when he goes in and he steals the ball out of his dad's
Some guy named Babe
office.
Ruth.
There you go. I mean, if anything, somebody's gonna watch that and go, "Who the hell's this guy?" And you're gonna start digging in, and there you go.
Yep. And then you're going to be like, "Holy crap! Did James Earl Jones play with him?" I was like, "No," and unfortunately, there's a reason for that, but you're not going to say it in The Sandlot.
Yeah.
Well, Sadie, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. Once again, let's put it this way. It's an appearance so nice, we had to do it twice.
That's right.
And, of course, down the road, we got to have you on again. Like I said, probably sooner rather than later, the way the playoffs are shaping up to be.
I'm good.
So, and
I won't be in Texas in a giant monsoon trying to play in a softball tournament.
exactly. And think about this. Sadie, you make jokes about your age all the time, and when we know you're not that old. But think of this: you lived long enough to see the Mariners make the playoffs again.
Well,
that's cold-blooded, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's extremely cold-blooded, but it's a really good segue because Ricky Rodriguez is a big Mariners fan.
Exactly. So there you go.
And Ken Griffey Jr.
And Ken Griffey Jr. Oh, you gotta love it. Okay. Well, Sadie, it has been a pleasure having you on.
Awesome.
And I know I'll be talking to you soon, okay, buddy? You be well.
Thank you.
Sadie Blaze, ladies and gentlemen, here on Roundabout Sports. Have a good night, buddy.
Later.
That's such a blast. I freaking love Sadie to death. I'm telling you, it is always a pleasure talking to him and having him on the show. And I know whenever that third time comes along, it's going to be great. But there was definitely, where was an interesting stat we had forgotten to mention, but we talked about 2,000, the guys with 2,000 plus strikeouts. There's another one that has Miguel Cabrera.
Yeah.
He struck out over 2,000. Oh, I don't want to say he struck out over 2,000 times this year, but he reached that mark this year.
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like a Chris Davis thing of striking out that much.
Well, we talked about all those marks, and we didn't even mention Garrett Cole and him reaching that plateau as a pitcher the other night. So,
this is a historic season, one of the best in recent memory. And and of course, folks, both on the Interstate 70 Sports media pages and all of that, we're going to keep you posted on how these playoffs unfold. I just know it's looking up to be a season for the ages, a postseason for the ages.
And on the Strike Zone tomorrow night, I'm actually going to break down these first round matchups, and we've got times for them as well too. Obviously, the Cardinals and the Phillies.
So random ass times: 7:07, 6:37.
So the sevens are that's a broadcasting thing. Even when I was in radio and worked in radio full time, it was always a 5 or a 7. It could be 115, it could be 117, it could be 705, it could be 707. But so the Cardinals and Phillies, the first pitch Friday afternoon is at 107, and then you've got Saturday night as a 7:37 start, and then Sunday night could be 6:07, 7:07, or 7:37, depending on the other series that are going on. So it's going to depend on how many game threes there are in the best of 3 wild card series. But we're going to break down the first round matchups tomorrow, and we'll have the betting window again, which I struggled with this week. Oh my God, I really thought I was going to do well, and I went 1-3. So
it'd be like that. And what time?
Great start.
And what time is that going to air? Is that going to end with a 5 or a 7?
We're I see what you did there. 6 o'clock tomorrow night. We're going 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
6
So
o'clock tomorrow night, folks.
yes.
And that's Central Time for all you wondering. Well, with all that, we are going to wrap it up here on Roundabout Sports. Thank you so much for tuning in. Folks, before we go, as always, we want to bring to awareness about help for mental health. And the NAMI hotline is one of the perfect places to go to if you need someone to talk to. They're open 24/7. You just call the NAMI hotline at 1-800-950-NAMI. That's 1-800-950-NAMI. And of course, as always, this is a big point for me to bring up at the end of every show. The Suicide and Crisis Lifeline used to be a long number, but now they've shortened it to 988. Understand that in this world that you are never truly alone. There's always someone out there that's willing to listen to you, that wants to help you, and that loves you. The world we live in is going through a lot of tough times, but there's not a battle out there that you can't overcome. And I think sometimes it just takes a bit of a reminder and that one little step to help with that. So with that, want to once again thank Sadie Blaze for being on this evening. As always, thank Hollywood James Knox for being by my side with this. I'm the maestro, Jeremy Karp, and remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. Good night, everybody.